Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Put the children to bed. It's time for Dan and Aldo to bare their souls.
I love the Chicago Bears more than I do masturbating, and that is a lot.
Then, with 3 seconds left, Bob Avellini throws a 30-something yard touchdown pass to Greg Latta, and the Bears win, and I literally shit my pants. I swear to God, I literally did.
Eric Kramer, for me, I love the guy. He's a tragic figure. I mean, he embodies all that is.
If they don't run the ball here, I'm going to vomit. I swear to God.
Look, I don't mean any disrespect. He just didn't play that well. Not for a guy of his caliber.
You know, they won, but I'm going to be miserable all week because they stunk.
I don't really have any recollection of that at all, but I guess perhaps I blacked it all out.
So, Dan, tape is the ultimate tool for scouts and for coaches to evaluate players, to detect plays and so forth. And they spend hours looking at tape, right? Why do they so often get shit wrong?
Ladies and gentlemen, Dan and Aldo.
And so therefore, we have to start with the big news from the weekend. I, Aldo Gandia, and the handsome gentleman photographed beside me had a big argument this weekend. But I got to tell you, the makeup sex was wonderful. Dan is such a great lover.
Yeah, well, I hate arguing with you. I truly do. And a lot of times I feel like if we're really going to clear this on air, I kind of feel like in a lot of instances it's misunderstandings. And I don't mean that just from your side. It could be from my side too. I honestly think that, and this is all I want to say about it. The Manson thing, I need to watch her documentary still, and I'm going to. And I want to say again that I'm not anti-female. She's the only female of the bunch that I specifically question. And again, without elaborating any farther, it's just like for example, that music video. She was the one at the time that came up with the concept. She was bragging about the Lolita thing, and the whole thing was her idea, and she acts like that wasn't. She talked about how, that kind of stuff bothers me, how those inconsistencies, and that's why I question her. But that doesn't mean that I think all women are liars or awful or anything like that. And as I told you, my mother was raped, so I take that kind of stuff seriously, even if you don't think I do.
Oh, I know you do. And if I said anything to make it seem like I don't, then I apologize.
No apologies needed. I just wanted you to know that I'm not anti-lady. It's almost like saying that it sounds like I'm guilty. It's almost like if somebody says you're racist, you're like, bro, I'm not racist. It makes you sound like you're racist.
And just to let people know what we were talking about was the whole Marilyn Manson, Evan Rachel Wood incident, allegations and so forth. There is an HBO documentary that has resurfaced the topic for me, and I shared some things with Dan, and I got a little frustrated with him because he disagreed with some of the things that made it seem like he was, in particular, taking Evan Rachel Wood's allegations and dismissing them on the surface. Now, Dan knows a lot more about the relationship between Marilyn Manson and Evan Rachel Wood than I do, but in the course of the documentary and from things that I've read is that Marilyn Manson is being accused of targeting young women and grooming them so that they can become his sex slaves. And that with the addition of his drug problem and a tendency to say and do racist things have kind of soured me on an artist that I appreciated in the past. And so, but my opinion on this is that I hope that this is heard in the legal courts and that some justice can come, whether it's for Marilyn Manson, who is now countersuing Evan Rachel Wood, or whether it's for Evan Rachel Wood and other victims who have come forward, alleged victims who have come forward. So that's basically it. And I think Dan and I are in a good place there.
Yeah, I really believe if it comes out that he did these things, to me it'll be similar to the conversation you had with Bill Cosby, where you're just left like, wow, I expected so much more from you. But again, to put a bow on it, my disbelief of this situation is based upon all the things she said before, which to me is a cop-out now to say, oh, but I was only 19 when I said those things. Or I said those things under his influence. I mean, you were an adult. If I was 19 and said some dumb things in 99, sure, I'm sure I did. But I own those statements, and I think it's an easy cop-out to suggest that you're not accountable for anything you said or did at that time. Like I said, that music video, she was so happy that they fucked on Manson's ex-wife, Dita Von Teese's bed in that video. She came up with the concept. She's like, I'm his Lolita, the Kubrick film, as you know.
Sure.
And she wore the heart-shaped glasses, and now, all of that was like, oh, I didn't come up with any of that. Oh, that's all bullshit. Like, no, but you said all that. And anybody that was around then knows that. So,
Dan, my question for you is, do you think that somebody could be groomed into saying things because she is a starstruck young lady and therefore has kind of fallen under the seduction of somebody who she really enjoyed? They were friends before they became lovers. She really enjoyed his intelligence. She really enjoyed what he was trying to do to get people to think differently and accept things that were outside the boxes. Do you think that it's possible that someone who is 18 years old could be groomed into saying those things and agreeing to have performing in sexual acts that she wasn't comfortable with? Because that's the premise, part of the premise of the documentary, which is what her allegations and claims are.
I mean, is it plausible? Of course it's plausible, but she also denies saying any of the things that she said before, which are on camera. Like, she bragged about their bondage, and now she says, "Oh, we never had kinky sex. I never said that." No, you did. It's on. Anyone can look it up. You did say those things. So the inconsistency is what bothers me. You and I have talked so much about like the politics and stuff offline, and in the history of cover-ups and like Watergate and all these things, it's always the lie that gets you.
That's right.
It's always the cover-up. It's always like, if you just come out and say, if Reagan came out of Iran-Contra unscathed somehow, but for the most, if it's Iran-Contra, Watergate, or anything, if you just come out and say, my bad, we fucked up, America will forgive you. And I think the lie is what's bothering me with her, the inconsistencies. But in the end, she deserves to. I'm not against that documentary airing or her telling her side of the story. Likewise, I want him to get the same due process. And it's not just because of Manson. Like, I feel the same way about Deshaun Watson, in the sense that it looks bad. All those allegations against Manson looks bad. All these allegations against Watson looks bad, but I don't think he should have had to have sat out the whole season and wasting his talent. Likewise, if we can segue, that makes that trade so scary to me as a Browns fan, because you're trading for a guy, you're giving up literally 4 or 5 years of your franchise if he misses, for a guy that missed an entire year and took a pretty big beating when he was playing a lot in Houston anyway. And now he hasn't played in 2 years. It seems like such a risky move to me.
It is a risky move and a somewhat cynical attempt by the Cleveland Browns to help Deshaun Watson out. I think it's to help Deshaun Watson out as much as it is to help their salary cap situation, but he's going to make $1 million in 2022. And he certainly faces some kind of suspension, whether it's for one game or multiple games by the NFL. And so it seems like yeah, well, we're going to help you out. Cleveland organization said to Deshaun Watson, we'll pay you $1 million. So if you face a one-game suspension, it's only $50,000 you'll be out, and the rest of the 200 and whatever $1 million is totally guaranteed. So you're going to do all right. Cynical part of me does feel like, wow, that just doesn't seem right. It almost negates whatever disciplinary action the NFL might take. But who knows? He might, he might end up losing the majority of those millions of dollars based on these 22 civil suits that he's facing. And whatever it is, again, just like with the Manson, Evan Rachel Wood thing, I hope that the truth comes out, and anyone that might be guilty of lying or doing anything duplicitous, anything against the law, I hope that they face justice. That's what it is.
If I was their attorney, and obviously I'm not qualified to be anyone's attorney, but in a hypothetical scenario, whether I was representing Deshaun or Manson or even Evan Rachel Wood, because there's lawsuits on both sides there. I would try to Kobe this shit as quickly as I could, make it go away. We don't have to disclose what happens. Like I don't want that to happen, but in reality, if I were the attorney, I would say, let's come up with a number to make this shit go away. No one discloses, no one talks about it. You sign non-disclosure agreements and let's move on with our lives, especially for Watson. Again, does it make it right? No, but if I was his attorney, I would be like, look, you're getting all this money guaranteed. I don't care how much you got to pay these women. Get this over with, and let's get on with our lives here and try to win games. I know that sucks in a moral sense, but if I was their attorney, that's what the goal I would be trying to achieve. But for the Browns, like 3 first-round picks, and then what was it, a third and a second? And
it's quite a lot, yes.
And look, you and I talked about the Browns a lot when we were there last year. I'm not this big Baker Mayfield advocate, but still, they hadn't won a playoff game since Vinny Testaverde won for them in 1994. And Baker won him a game and could have beaten Kansas City. So he could have gotten him to the AFC Championship game, and he's the guy you drafted. It's kind of hard for me just to be like, well, sweep this guy under the rug if I'm a Browns fan. And we can very easily be Browns fans because their situation is similar to ours in some ways.
Yeah.
When it comes to like just a lot of mismanagement, a lot of losing, although at least we have a Super Bowl. Cleveland's never even been there and had terrible luck along the way when they could have gotten there. But it seems like a really hasty move. Like a desperate move.
I think it is somewhat desperate because they feel they've got the squad right now to win a Super Bowl, and that the only thing they're missing is a very effective quarterback. And what they have started to leak out to the media is that Baker Mayfield was very difficult to work with. He was always questioning things to the point where it became a nuisance. You always want players, especially leaders on the team, to question decisions, particularly if it affects you, the player. And the quarterback should be challenging his coaches and so forth. But the amount of disruption that he was creating, a perfect example is the Odell Beckham issue. And now Odell was kind of the vocal aggressor by publicly, his father was the one that publicly let out some information saying that, hey, the guy is open and Baker won't throw him the ball. So there was something going on there, and it clearly upset the Browns management. So they see a small window for a Super Bowl based on the fact that they've got these outstanding star players on defense and they've got some weapons on offense. So I think it was.
Well, let me ask you a question. You put on your GM hat. Aldo Gandia for 1 hour is the Cleveland Browns general manager.
Okay.
I got 2 trades for you. I got this one for Deshaun Watson and everything that goes along with it. We already know the trade. That exact trade. Or you can give up a 3rd-round pick and get Matt Ryan. Which one are you doing?
I'm doing Matt Ryan because
isn't that true though?
Yes.
I agree with you, but go ahead.
Because I want to draft a good quarterback that I can build around. And that what happens with Deshaun Watson is that his salary is going to get to the point where you're going to be hamstrung and not be able to sign some of your own stars, and so I think the best way to build a football team is to bring in a young quarterback. If maybe he's ready to go year one, if not, hopefully he's ready to go in year two. And that way you've got some salary flexibility to add some players. And that's really what Matt Ryan allows them to do, because a lot of that money of his salary stays with the Falcons. The Falcons now have the biggest dead cap money in almost history, in NFL history. And the Browns.
They have just the right man to solve it too, Ryan Pace.
Yeah, that's right. The point. So, that's my preference. Now, it would be very, very difficult to say no to Deshaun Woods, but man, what you're giving up, the 3 first rounders, the other draft picks involved, the amount of money you're going to pay him, you really don't, you have some character concerns. And some people in the chat room are saying that he hasn't been convicted of anything.
Oh, I agree with that.
Yeah,
I agree with
absolutely. He hasn't even been indicted. They went to the grand jury, and there wasn't, according to the grand jury, sufficient enough evidence to indict him. So that's why
I think he should have been able to play last year. That was my point. It was kind of bullshit that Houston just made him sit down. But be that as it may, it's a risk. We saw what a year off did Eddie Goldman, for example. 2 different positions, I get it. But still, a year off, now he hasn't even played in 2 years. That's a huge concern for me. If I'm Browns management, I would take the Matt Ryan deal, even though Matt Ryan is old and has been in the league since 08. I tell you what, my proclamation is this. The Bears are better off with Justin Fields than both of those teams, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, Justin still has a lot to prove. There's no doubt about that. But I still love the talent, the raw talent, and hopefully this off season, we saw some photographic evidence of how he's working on his delivery. Most Bears fans know he's got that kind of loopy delivery where he brings the ball down low and then fires. And there was a videotape released of him working out with Colin Kaepernick and a bunch of other quarterbacks. And the release is not anywhere near what it was. It's much more higher up. So that means a quicker release. It'll mean fewer sacks. It'll mean more accuracy. And so that's a good thing. He's got to work on making quicker decisions as well. And that should come because he really is a smart guy. He really does his homework. And so I'm really high on what Justin Fields is going to provide. And I think the Bears are taking the right approach and smashing everything apart. But what I am concerned about is basically the main topic of discussion tonight with the Chicago Bears is Ryan Poles hibernating a little too much and not signing some players that could help immediately to field a good team in 2022. I'm almost thinking that he is taking the Theo Epstein route, which is those 2 or 3 seasons that the Cubs played the absolute worst baseball in Major League Baseball. It earned them first overall picks in the draft, but boy, it was just so painful to see for those 2 or 3 seasons if you were a Cubs fan. I don't think this rebuild is necessary for a 2 or 3 year wait, but it does feel like, wow, we're bypassing some really good players.
But the difference is, in my opinion, is that we do have Fields. So yeah. I think if Fields improves, he can negate a lot of those things that those Cubs teams couldn't because they didn't have a superstar in the waiting at that time. And maybe Poles is betting on our quarterback. I don't know that that's true, but I hope it is. And I will confess right off the top, I made some dude mad on Twitter, and he just kept coming at me, and eventually I was like, dude, just block me. But if you don't like what I say, then fuck you, man. Just leave me alone. I didn't call you out, but I was like so just disenchanted when I saw the Larry Ogunjobi thing, and it's just like your first acquisition and it falls through. I know that could happen to anybody, right? But it always happens to us. And I've defended this team. On this show, I've defended the McGinnis thing in '99, saying, well, fuck him. He should have wanted to be here. But these kind of things always happen to the Bears. And maybe I'm feeling sorry for myself. I can't recall a situation with another team like that, where they signed a dude like, oh, give him a shit ton of money. And then they're like, oh, well, you know what? He failed his physical. Sorry.
Yeah, and I had a long talk with Greg Gabriel about it, both off the air and on his show, and Greg was really adamant that we have to, as fans, understand that that's part of the process. You complete the deal first, and then the player comes in for a physical. So the feeling, the agent is I'm sure telling Poles, yeah, he's fine, he'll be ready to go once the season starts, and so they agree on the deal pending the physical. Then Ogunjobi comes in, has the physical, and the doctors say, yeah, there's a problem here. And who knows what it could be? It could be he won't be ready in 2022, or it could mean he probably will be ready sometime during the middle of the season. And then Poles is probably thinking, well, I don't want to wait that long. It could be anything, those things, or something else. And so it is part of the process, and other teams have had to go through that too. It's not the Chicago Bears, but I certainly understand your frustration. First of all, with that Twitter guy, I mean, why can't people just disagree respectfully? You made a comment expressing your frustration.
It's like, yeah, the Bears, who we are, because I've been so optimistic to this point.
Yeah, you have.
And I'm like, here we are a fucking clown show, like everybody says we are.
Mm-hmm.
We can't even sign free agents. I did feel just so down about it.
Well,
and everything you just said.
The term clown show, and so I think that's what set people off.
Yeah, that's what made the guy mad. But on the flip side of that, it's just like you can't measure, we could all measure each other's dicks if we needed to, but we can't measure your fandom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the guys like this always go to. Well, you're not as big a fan as I am. Like, well, fuck you. You can't measure that. It's not quantifiable. Who's a bigger fan? We're all fans.
Mm-hmm.
And, you don't even know me. So how can you, somebody, in cyberspace, it's not even a real place, tell me that I'm not a real fan? Man, fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I was like, just block me,
Yeah.
But after hearing what you said with Greg Gabriel, it made me feel better about it. And what was going through my head at that minute was the Pernell McPhee signing, where it felt like maybe we signed him and probably should have failed his physical.
Yeah.
Because the whole time he was here, he had an arthritic knee and could barely walk.
Yeah. And I hate to say I told you so, but during that period, I wasn't against the signing, but I was like, they should limit this guy's snaps. He has had constant knee problems with the Ravens. Why are we playing him almost every defensive snap? He can be more effective and play for a longer period of time if we bring him in on obvious passing situations. But they had him out there so much, it was clear that knee was going to start acting up. We got a question here from Cliff Victoria. Aldo, do you think Poles feels he can get more talent for less towards the end of free agency? He absolutely does think he's waiting very, very patiently. God bless the guy. He's got the patience that I'll never have. But my problem is that the talent now is whittled down. So you're making all of these really good signings. I mean, meaning from a cost perspective. But are these guys any good? I mean, a lot of these guys have never been starters. Brian Pringle, probably the closest, the offensive lineman. Certainly he started 11, 12 games. But this next wave of free agent signings, these aren't stars. These aren't, really top talented second stringers. When we let Juju Smith-Schuster sign elsewhere, and I'm looking up what he signed for.
Kansas City.
To Kansas City, 1-year contract, $3.25 million contract, 2.5 of that guaranteed. I say to myself, why not him? Why not
Julio Jones?
Yeah. I mean, for 1 year while you're doing a bridge and you're going to draft a young wide receiver, working with Julio Jones or Juju Smith-Schuster, that could be really beneficial for the guy, to have a veteran who has accomplished some things.
And that could help Mooney too.
Exactly. Absolutely. So I'm just at a point now where I'm frustrated, but I'm also, it is clear that this is a rebuild season from the get-go. Like everything is going to be a really bad 2020. I got into an argument.
I don't think so. I don't, man. I know you look at it, the schedule could change. You never know who's going to be good. but it's not as daunting on paper as last season was. And our division, man, I'm not saying it's totally weak, because I'm just saying, if you told me that any of the teams in the division won, like suddenly Minnesota had a great year with their new coach, or maybe Detroit turned it around, maybe that's the least likely. But still, I could buy in like any scenario of any of the 4 teams winning the division. That's your ticket to the playoffs. And I think I believe Fields is going to get better. Like, why not at least have a good run and potentially make the playoffs? I think we can.
Yeah, I'm with you. My problem is like, and I say it every episode at the top of the show, we won, but I'm miserable because we stunk. And so that's what I don't want for this Ryan Poles era. I want a team that wins 14, 15 games. And when they go into the playoffs, and we all have high expectations. The last time this happened was in 2018. I surely thought that we were going to get past the Eagles. And after that game, it was an easy ticket, easy maybe too big of a word there, but we had a ticket to the Super Bowl, man. That was the year. That's why I fucking literally cried when that fucking kicker missed that, because I knew, man, this might not happen again for a while. There's no guarantee that Nagy is the right coach. We saw as that season went on, more and more blemishes in his play calling and so forth. And it wasn't like Trubisky this is a bona fide franchise player. We all had hope. Most of us had hope, but man, it was very, very fucking painful. And I don't want to go through that again. Yeah.
The one thing that let me go and put the guy over first. Shane Marsaw got the Cody Parkey signing. He called that out immediately.
He did.
And said, "Oh, fuck, this guy sucks. This is a bad signing."
Yep.
But the one thing that I said, and I hate being right on it, you had all that great coverage the weekend going into the game, man. Like Tom Waddle was on the air with us, and I wasn't on the air with you all, but I was listening. And obviously I'm part of the bar room too, and I'm listening. So I say us. But it was just a great amount of Bears coverage that weekend. And I remember asking Shane specifically, like, doesn't it frighten you that like 2001, we're 13-3 and, you lose to Philly, and then the next season you're 4-12. You don't even make the playoffs. He's like, oh, that won't happen this year. He's like, this team is too good on defense. So even if they lose to Philly, there's no way they just go away next year. And what the fuck happened? So that's the one I was right on, but not to say he was wrong. But I didn't have that amount of like, oh, this team's bulletproof kind of approach to it because of the defense. But to his credit, no one could have seen Akeem Hicks getting hurt and Mac's play going so down so quickly.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the Mac talk right now. Maybe later in the show or in a future episode, because I got some more thoughts I want to share on that. But again, getting back to this main topic of whether Poles is over hibernating during this free agency period, today we heard the signing by the Miami Dolphins of Teron Armstead, the brilliant left tackle who is now going to be protecting Tua Tagovailoa. And so, yeah, I know he's 30 years old. I know the money is like unbelievable, but it's a left tackle, a plug. And I know that he's got a injury history. So, but
ironically with them, they need a good right tackle because Tua is left-handed.
That is true. But I got to ask this question to everyone in the chat room and to you, Dan, and when John joins us, if he wants to share an opinion, should that have been the one exception during this free agency period? Like they really made the exception for Ogunjobi. They said they were going to wait for the second wave. Well, they blew that out of the water immediately. They signed Ogunjobi, very, very early in the process. And should they not have done something like that for the sake of Justin Fields? Should we not have said, this guy, if he stays healthy, he's got 5-6 years of premium offensive line, pass blocking and run blocking prowess ahead of him. Let's make that huge investment. Now is the time to do it while our quarterback is under his rookie contract. I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying that had to be, I hope at least that people were pounding their tables and there was one side pro sign him and one side pro no, let's stick with the plan. I just hate that there was one little rumor out there that the Bears were interested in Armstead, but he didn't even come to Chicago as far as any reports. Aaron, the bearded Bears fan, says Armstead is a 31-year-old guy who has never played a full season. Maybe they see more from Jenkins than we think. And that's a fair point, Aaron. Definitely a fair point. What do you think, Dan? Do you think that perhaps the Chicago Bears should have just said, yes, it's a little risky because of his age and injury history, but this is the absolute best left tackle that we will have access to for the next few years. So let's bring him in and see if we can cut a deal.
That's tough. But like you said, maybe our draft pick Jenkins is impressive to them. Maybe Larry Borum is impressive to them. I don't know, but like you, I would think at the very least, if you could sign a guy and your worst problem is he has to be the backup, despite his money, then you got a good problem.
Right.
You don't want to go into like last season when you had all this, well, we've got our left tackle, we drafted him. Oh, but he can't play. And then you have to sign a guy that's almost 40 who played well, all things considered, by the way, in Peters, but you don't. Yeah, I would like for them to have a plan and a contingency plan off of that going into the offseason. And it never felt like Pace did that in the entire 7 years when it came to the offensive line. But our guy now, you gotta have some faith. His expertise obviously is offensive line.
That's right. And he should know good talent, and we should have faith that he's going to build a great offensive line. But boy, it's kind of frustrating to see what the state of the offensive line is right now. There's the acquisition.
And we lost Bars too.
And we lost Alex Bars, who I think most of us will agree was a more than serviceable backup who could play multiple positions. While with the Bears, he played left tackle, he played right guard, he played right tackle. I'm not sure if he played left guard or center.
He started a game at center too.
Yeah, there you go. That's right. It wasn't a great performance, but during an emergency, you need somebody out there. So it seems to me that here's another guy, Laken Tomlinson. And if Don Bear is in the chat room, he'll probably say Laken Tomlinson sucks. Well, he did when he was a Detroit Lion, but he goes over to the San Francisco 49ers, and he is outstanding at zone blocking, which is the scheme offensive linemen are going to be running with the new Bears. It's this outside zone blocking, and he is just graded among the absolute best guards at zone blocking. His pass blocking is not exemplary. It's serviceable, but his run blocking is. So why not go after Laken Tomlinson, particularly since in 2022, this should be a run-first team, at least for the first half of the season.
We signed a fullback, so it seems like that's the idea, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this guy can play, man. He can block. He's not like who was the guy that Phil was always making fun of?
Michael Burton.
Michael Burton.
And he's like in Kansas City somewhere, like doing well enough to stay in the league. Like, yeah. I like Phil looked at Michael Burton looked okay when he was in Detroit, ironically, but with the Bears was terrible. Hey, real quick, since Don's in the chat room, can you ask him?
I don't know if he is.
I know all Lions fans don't have the same opinion. Like we all don't have the same opinion, but was the consensus that they were happy for Stafford winning? Or were they rooting against Stafford? I really don't know the answer to that.
I think he said either on our show or another barroom show that the most Lions fans were very happy for Stafford. But yeah, that's got to be a real painful pill to swallow.
We could see that with Trubisky in Pittsburgh, man, like Mike North says.
Yeah, there was a rumor today, not a rumor, it was fact that the Steelers brass took out Malik. What's the quarterback's name? He had his pro day today. They took him out to dinner. So it appears that perhaps the Steelers might be interested in drafting a quarterback in the first or second round. And if that's the case, Trubisky may not even be a starter and this season or maybe next season. We'll see how long his career with Pittsburgh
They
is.
Still have Haskins, too. I mean,
they have Haskins.
First-round pick and Mason Rudolph.
Another first-round pick. Am I right or wrong on that? He was a high pick in any case. So they're creating some competition there. If they draft this quarterback, it's going to be interesting to follow what happens with Trubisky in Pittsburgh. Here's another player. So outside the offensive line, which is, I think, where most of the money should go to. I think that 2022 should be about improving the offense and giving Justin Fields everything that he needs to succeed.
And to stay healthy.
So you need to invest money in the offensive line, and you need to invest money in wide receivers. So a few players that I was disappointed that the Bears did not sign. Russell Gage from Atlanta Falcons. He had an injury-filled first half of the season with the Falcons, and then he was among the best receivers in the second half of the season with Atlanta. And then he signs a 3-year, $30 million contract with only $20 million guaranteed. I thought that was a guy that those figures to me say, sign me. Jakeem Grant, who you love, I love. I think
he's with the Browns, right?
He's with the Browns now, signed a 3-year, $13 million contract, only $3 million guaranteed. I mean,
that could be our returner. I don't know why we didn't bring him back.
Yeah, a returner, and he's a big playmaker when he gets into the game, whether in the backfield or in the slot position. I don't understand why he was allowed to leave. Juju Smith-Schuster, I said earlier, 1 year, 3.25, only 2.5 guaranteed. So there's those wide receivers were guys on my list that I really, really wanted to see the Bears acquire. PJ says, I will maintain that the Bears should have retained James Daniels, and that's another guy who it could come back to bite us in the butt, where Dan is famous for saying, how come every Bears player that we let go ends up playing better elsewhere? James Daniels could be that guy. So, I mean,
are we going to have a James Daniels revenge game?
Oh, my goodness. If he does, can you imagine that? The running back just running behind him for 225 yards.
Mitch running behind him.
Yes, oh, my God. The pain. Oh, I feel like Fred Sanford. The big one is coming. So, and then
Sanford and Son got weird when Lamont left the show, and they had the white dude with the beard join the cast.
Who was
random thought? You remember that big white guy that had the big beard?
I don't remember him.
Yeah, toward the end, Lamont was gone, and Fred just hung out with the white guy with the beerd.
That is weird. There was this Hispanic
it wasn't
guy.
Sanford and Son anymore. It was Sanford and the white guy with the beard.
Yeah. Man, you know your retro stuff, because were you watching TV when Sanford and Son was on?
The reruns.
Okay.
When I was a kid, we only had like 10 or 12 channels when I was young, and like TBS used to show the shit out of those. And BET too.
Yeah. Jeremy says Pringle is an upgrade over Grant. Easy decision. Yes, he is. And I'm not arguing that.
Is he a returner?
He's not. See, that's the thing.
I wasn't being facetious. I don't know the answer to that.
See, yeah. I mean, why not both of them? I love that signing. The Pringle signing, I'm all for. This guy
seemed to be very enthusiastic.
Yeah.
He was very happy. He said that Chicago called him. He says, I know this offense. So I like that, he's saying those things. And I don't really mind the St. Brown signing, because I look at it and think he didn't get any money particularly.
Less than $1 million.
Yeah, it's a bet on himself kind of deal. And obviously our offensive coordinator must see something in him, because if he didn't, he would have said, don't sign this fucking bum. So maybe he knows that he wasn't getting the opportunities. Don in Detroit, again, their guy, the brother, St. Brown's brother, does well with the Lions.
He does very well.
He looks like he could be a star in the next year or two. So maybe our St. Brown can be something. I always want to call him ignoramus, though. What's his first name?
Equanimous.
I'm just going to call him St. Brown.
I think that's a good call. Johnny Santucci says Pringle had over 600 yards returning kicks. So correction given. So Pringle does return kicks. I would hate to use him in that capacity, since it appears he will be the number 2 wide receiver along with Darnell Mooney. I would rather have, somebody who is 3rd or 4th on your depth chart at wide receiver returning kicks because of the possibility of injury. But no, that's fine if he's going to be the return guy. But I got a feeling the Bears are going to draft somebody, or Khalil Herbert showed some promise returning kicks. So it's not the end of the world that Grant is gone, but I fell in love with him the few games that he was here. His only problem was he traditionally had a fumble problem, and he did fumble once as a Bear, but it wasn't a terrible one. Nicholas says that the Bears hosted Trevor Siemian today. Perhaps Foles is getting traded for a late rounder. And Dan, you talked about that before we went live. What's your feeling on that?
I thought, we've had Sylvester on a few times. I've told him, I thought, Trevor Siemian was a guy I probably wouldn't have just thrown away if I were the Broncos.
Mm-hmm.
He did okay when he played, considering he was a 7th round pick. I thought he played well for them, and I thought Osweiler had upside for them too. But anyway, Siemian did okay when he was asked to play in Denver. I didn't follow him along the way. I know he's met the Saints and the Vikings, and I don't know what else he's done, but I did see him in Denver when he was starting, and he's okay. And if you were telling me he was coming here to start, then I would have reservations. Just the way that I still can't believe Atlanta was like, Mariota, you're our guy. Come on down. Like, really? But
that is weird.
yeah, like they signed him as soon as they traded Matt Ryan. It's like, God damn, like really? This guy hasn't played in like 3 seasons now. But okay. Back to the point is Siemian could be a good backup, I think. Although I'm not opposed to keeping Foles because that's his thing, man. He's like your best insurance plan possible. But like you've pointed out, maybe he's so far away from the type of offense that you want to build around Fields with his strengths,
right?
That maybe that's why you would deal him. But other than that, he's got to be somebody that can help Fields in the locker room and such.
Yeah. One other thing about Trevor Siemian, when he came out in 2015, I really wanted the Bears to take a chance at him in the mid to late rounds because Pace, if you remember his introductory press conference,
he was going to draft a quarterback every year. And
exactly. And so he played fairly well. He played better than fairly well. He played well at Northwestern, and he seemed to be kind of a West Coast offense kind of guy. And I never imagined that he would be a long-term starter, but you need to target guys who can come in and be your backup guy and groom them. And who knows, maybe they turn into something bigger and better than you anticipated. So I had him.
And he's got starting, at least he started some games.
Yeah.
So he's got some experience in the event that he would have to play here.
Yeah. So, but be that as it may, hey, Don Burr is here in the chat. Let's see. I just saw him put something up there. Let's see. What's he say? Aldo and Dan, you can learn something besides taking ridiculous. Taking ridiculous. They telling you LOL. Now it's maybe. I don't know what the fuck you're saying, Don.
I was going to say, what?
I think he's talking to somebody else, and they're discussing something. So but the question for Don was what again? Oh, about Stafford. Don.
Yeah. What he thought, was he rooting for Stafford in the Super Bowl or against him?
Yeah, we need a quote from you, Don. So let us know how you and the entire Lions community felt about Stafford's success prior.
And
to
I'm
the
not
Super Bowl
anti-Detroit. Let me tell Don that again. I loved their fullback. He used to throw Urlacher on his ass, man. That Corey Schlesinger, from Nebraska, and I loved Herman Moore, and I loved Eric Kramer. So, and obviously Kramer came to us, but I'm not anti-Detroit Lion at all. I'm not trying to throw any jabs at him at all.
Yeah, come on, Barry Sanders. Who was the other running back? Sims.
Billy Sims.
Those guys were super players, and besides Calvin Johnson, you mentioned Herman Moore. They had players that were fun to watch, and then I'll never forget the game, the Lions-Bear game that I saw, where now I'm forgetting his name. The wide receiver passed away on the football field against the Chicago
in front of
Bears.
Butkus. I've seen that photo.
Yeah, never ever will I forget that as a kid. I thought Dick Butkus actually killed him because.
Were you watching?
Yes, I was watching, and I was really worried about his health because you could sense that the entire stadium was a really scary silence. And the announcers, I don't recall who was announcing. I want to say it was Ray Scott, one of my favorite announcers. They kind of let that silence sink in. And then the game was over around 3:30 Chicago time. And then when I turned on the 6 p.m. news, they announced that he had passed away. I was like, holy cow. I wonder if Dick Butkus is going to get in trouble, because it was 2 or 3 plays beforehand where Butkus tackled, what's his name, Jones? And I wrote a story about this for the website, but in any case, I thought that he had tackled, but now hindsight being 2020, he really didn't. And it looked like he did. And it was somebody else that hit him and so forth. But the long part of the story is that this guy was suffering from heart problems and had complained to Detroit training staff that he was having chest pains. And they kind of just did a superficial check. Yeah, you're fine. Play through it and that kind of stuff. And apparently it was a very serious heart condition that he had. And he was playing a lot in that game. And it was just a terrible, terrible death on the football field. One that I'll
definitely not the same thing, but was it Reggie Lewis that died on the court? Didn't he die on the court for the Celtics? In 91, 2-ish?
Was it Reggie Lewis?
And was his name Hank Gathers?
Hank Gathers did the what West Coast college basketball team did he play for? It
seems like Westhead was his coach, wasn't he?
Yes, he played.
Yeah, since we were talking about winning time last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Hank Gathers, I remember that clearly. Reggie Lewis, did he died July 27th, 1993, so it couldn't have been on the court.
Okay.
Unless it was did Reggie Lewis die on the court? During
that's a false memory of mine then. Sorry.
Oh, no, here. On July 27, 1993, during off-season practice at Brandeis University in Massachusetts, Lewis suffered sudden cardiac death on the basketball court at the age of 27.
So it was a practice then, or training camp, or whatever they call their training camp.
Yeah, exactly. So Len Bias died, but wasn't the Len Bias death
his was cocaine related, allegedly.
Right. Yeah, this kid was going to be a superstar. They loved the way this guy played. He was going to the Celtics, and apparently he started partying too much with some friends and kind of celebration, and we never got to see his great talent on the court.
Can I ask you one before we get back to football?
Sure.
I want to ask you one NBA question that I honestly, I'm not setting up a bit. I don't know the answer to this. I've never figured this out. Again, it's relevant to winning time.
Mm-hmm.
So the Lakers, were like, who are we going to draft? We're going to draft. How did Boston already have Larry Bird in their back pocket? Can anyone please tell me how the fuck that happened?
Yeah, as I remember it, the NBA had a rule that you could draft a player, and if they did not come out to the NBA, you still held his draft rights the following season. So let's say if they still had that rule now, you draft, the Bulls draft a player and he says, I'm going to stay in college another year. Fine. The Bulls would then have his draft rights the next year and could rescind those draft rights and pick somebody else or maintain the rights of the previous pick. So that's how it was with the Celtics. They drafted him the year before, and Larry said, I'm going to stay at Indiana State for another season. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that. But when you said that, it made me think of Tampa Bay drafting Bo.
Mm-hmm.
And then, he's like, fuck it, I'm not playing for you. And then ended up going to the Raiders the next year in the supplemental.
Yeah. And I don't think that the NFL ever had that same rule as the NBA. So if you drafted somebody and they chose not to come out, I think that rule has always been with the NFL, that those rights then go back into the pool of eligible players to be drafted. And the NBA did away with their rules. So there you go. Tooch writes, Scottie Pippen Jr. with a clutch three-pointer at the halftime buzzer to cover the first half spread. Yes, look at Tooch, man, in the background. He's got confetti going on. He's got his little horn, his New Year's horn. He's so happy. So you've been watching a lot of NBA basketball over the weekend, huh?
Yeah, like where we've been talking about the NBA so much recently.
Mm-hmm.
And if Don's in the chat room still, I've been defending Isaiah, to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I just got inspired to go back and watch a lot of these games. I watched the 88 finals, game 6, where Isaiah hurt his ankle.
Mm-hmm.
I watched game 7. I watched the 89 Eastern Conference finals where the Pistons put the Bulls out in game 6. And then I watched all 4 of the games against the Lakers in the finals. So next week, when I have more time, I'm going to watch game 7 of 90 when they put Chicago out in Detroit. And I'm going to watch the Blazers series again. So all this Isaiah talk got me to, so many cool things I had forgotten about. Like it told you Adrian Dantley had that interview at half where he's just like, fuck this, I should be there. This trade was bullshit. He's not cussing, but and I told you Brent was like, man, you're obviously bitter. And he didn't get mad. And then Dick Stockton called him bitter. And it's just like, you would never see an interview like that today. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was endorsing LA Gear. Like, I don't remember that at all. So it was very fun to go back and see these old ads and things. So a deep dive this past weekend for sure.
Yeah. And I got to tell you that you sharing tweets, I mean, Dan was almost like doing play-by-play for some of the games. It was cool to read what he was seeing. But it just reminded me of how great of a player Isaiah Thomas was. And, basketball to me is the one sport more than any of the other sports that picking a top 10 list of the greatest players in NBA history is harder to do. It's like I can think of 70, 80 guys who should be in the top 10 list.
Yeah, because I never got to see Bill Russell.
Yeah. And
I never got to see Wilt Chamberlain.
And those two guys definitely deserve to be. I mean, Bill Russell, he basically invented the block shot and perfected it. He never blocked a ball out of bounds. He always blocked it down court so the Celtics would get a fast break 2-pointer on it. And so he was basically a 4-point guy. And I've read a lot about Bill Russell and saw some of his games live when they were broadcast on ABC, Saturday afternoon games on NBA on ABC. And he was a player coach for the last 2 or 3 championships. Tremendous guy. And then Wilt Chamberlain, a 7-footer who had guard-like speed and movement. I mean, this guy was tremendous. And, of course, everybody knows he scored 100 points and stuff. You could easily put 70 guys into that top 10 list. And Isaiah definitely deserves consideration as one of the top 10 players of all time. And Michael Jordan himself said it, that after Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas is the greatest point guard of all time. And I agree with that, man.
I would love to see some young Kareem with the Bucks. Like I saw Kareem old and at the time, like I didn't even get to see, I think he was like finals MVP in like 85. Even that was too early for me. Like the first finals I remember watching, which is why I indelibly have Isaiah in my head as being a great player, is because the 88 series was the first one that I watched. I've gone back and watched others prior to that now, but that was the first one I watched live. So when he hurt his ankle and scored all those points on his ankle in game 6, it was just like, wow, like what a fucking, like this guy's got heart, but I would love to see Kareem Young.
Yeah.
And like the young Jordan, like I saw the majority, like probably 85% of Jordan's career from almost start to finish. But I would like to see the start. Like you said, the old games that you had, I would love to see what Jordan was doing in like 85. Well, I know the one year in 86, he broke his leg. Foot. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, he missed almost that whole season, but in theory, like his first year and his third year, that would be some good shit. As I came in probably year 4 for him when I started watching them. And I still say, as we were talking briefly in text about it, that a lot of people disagree with me on this. I honestly think that they would have been better off with Oakley than Cartwright, because Cartwright had no fucking offensive game whatsoever. He had the ugliest free throw I've ever seen, like next to Anthony Mason from the Knicks. And we were talking, I think they still win with Doug Collins, but probably not as much because Phil seemed to make Michael pass more.
Yes, Phil was able to finally get it through Jordan's thick skull that we can play better. We can win that championship. You are so dying to win if you hit the open man. By the way, I'm gonna make you jealous here. I not only got to see Jabbar play with the Milwaukee Bucks, and this was back when he was Lou Alcindor. I saw him,
and Oscar Robertson too, right?
Yes, I saw him play and a playoff game against the Chicago Bulls at the old Chicago Stadium. It was a playoff game. My brother and I and my cousin, we got into the bus on Western Avenue, went down there, were able to land standing room only tickets, and it was such an incredible thing to watch this guy who was clearly and easily not only the most dominant guy on the basketball court, but to me was the most dominant guy in the planet Earth, the way he was manhandling the Chicago Bulls in this playoff game. And back then, the Bulls were the bad boys of basketball. They had Jerry Sloan and Norm Van Lier. These two guys would hack everybody they could. And then they had Dennis Autry, who was the predecessor to Dave Corzine as the hacker guy. You just go out there. Dennis Autry was out there to just cripple Lou Alcindor. And to show you what a hypocrite I am, I would cheer for that. And then when the Detroit Pistons started to do it for the Bears, I started crying, oh, that's not allowed. That's not the way the game is played. So
that Corzine's probably the worst player I've ever seen in terms of being a center.
Yes.
Like that's the big difference too. If you look back at the Detroit beating them, I mean, they had, no hate on Sam Vincent. He was okay, but they had like Brad Sellers and Sam Vincent and this Corzine guy, like there's a lot of pieces that aren't there in 2 years is what I'm saying. When they win the championship, not that Will Perdue was like great or anything, but Corzine's a bum.
Yeah.
But I guess he stayed in the league 10 years. So, I mean,
back then,
who the hell am I calling a bum? But,
back then, if you were a 7-footer, no matter how bad you played, there was a spot for you on some roster. I got a quick Dave Corzine story to tell you. When Stacey King was here doing his podcast, he did about a half dozen of them here at the studio. He shared this story about when he was coming into the league, the Bulls had him come in for a tryout, and they ran him through some drills and so forth. And then after a while, Jerry Krause said, listen, we want to see you go up against some contact. And he was like, nah, man, I don't want to risk an injury and so forth. And he goes, no, this will be easy. We just want to see your post-up moves and so forth. And so this big 7-footer comes in, and Stacey looks at him, they're going to put me up against Dave Corzine. And so he reluctantly said yes. And so first play, an elbow from the guy that's guarding Stacey, and then another elbow when he's on defense, and Stacey's like, oh, so it's going to be like that. And then Stacey just starts getting physical with the guy, and then he turns around and says, how do you like that, Corzine? And people then say, well, wait a minute, that's not Corzine, that's the assistant coach, Phil Jackson.
Oh my God. Wow.
Who would end up being his head coach. So it's a great story. And Stacey does it a lot better than me.
That's great. And I mentioned this to you in text.
Mm-hmm.
So I was watching that NBA Finals. I think it may have been game 2, and they were talking about Rick Pitino leaving the Knicks. And so the Knicks had this opening, and Phil Jackson was on there. I mean, they had pre-recorded the piece, obviously, earlier in the day. But Phil was on there saying, I would love to go to the Knicks. This job is built for me. I played there.
Mm-hmm.
And within a couple of weeks, they fired Doug Collins and give Phil the job. I'm not saying that they did that to preclude him to go to the Knicks, but either way, the Knicks, imagine the difference in the league if they said, fuck it, Phil Jackson's our guy. Let's hire him. Like, man, imagine the difference.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe New York wins some championships. Who knows? I don't know. The Knicks in hindsight should have hired him then, not much later, but in like 1989, 90 instead of the Bulls.
And the thing is that at that point in his life, Phil was known for his marijuana smoking, for being kind of hippie, wearing straw hats and sunglasses and walking around in sandals and so forth. And so I'm sure the Knicks were like, maybe that's not the right look. And it was credit Jerry Krause. He may have done a lot of improper things as the general manager of the Chicago Bulls, but he had a lot of faith in Phil Jackson as a teacher, as a leader. And,
Michael didn't like him at first, right?
At first he didn't. He's in like all this crazy, Zen shit. What the fuck is all this? And he and Doug Collins had developed a strong bond. At first, Jordan and Collins fought a lot because in practice, Collins would do things like Michael's practice team would go up by 10 points, and then he would switch Michael into the losing team to see how Michael could come back from a 10-point deficit. And Jordan would get pissed off. I helped get the 10-point lead. Now you're going to fucking put me back 10 points behind. He would get pissed off at Collins about that, and they would have arguments about it. But Jordan started to appreciate the type of player he was building him into. And so that was pretty cool. So at first he wasn't too happy about the firing of Collins and then Phil's unusual approach to stuff, but he started to appreciate it. He never read any of the books that Jackson would give out to all the players. I don't think any of the players read them. Maybe PJ Armstrong did. But
on the flip, the Knicks did hire a Jackson, but it wasn't Phil, it was Stu Jackson. They hired the wrong Jackson. It's like they had Michael Jackson right there, and they said, fuck it, let's hire this Tito guy.
That is right.
That's the comparison between Phil and Stu.
Who was it? You texted me something about Snapper Jones. What was that?
Oh, I love Steve Snapper Jones. Yeah, he used to I used to always get the NBA League Pass,
Mm-hmm.
and he did the Portland regional games.
Yes.
For the Trailblazers, and he worked for NBC back in the day too. I thought he was great.
Yeah. Snapper Jones was a great announcer. As you mentioned in one of your texts, Chick Hearn with the Lakers was outstanding. Known as a sourpuss off the mic. And there was a great scene with him and Pat Riley in that TV show.
Wow. I wish we had Jeff Pearlman on tonight to ask if that really happened.
Yeah. You know what? That's a good question. I think I got the book somewhere. I'm going to take a look at it later after the show and see if I can find that chapter.
Yeah. I interrupted your thought. So in case somebody didn't watch it, they had Chick Hearn say to Pat Riley that he sounded like a homosexual. So he didn't think that he would sound good on air because he sounded a little too homo, which I don't feel comfortable saying in 2022 or any other era, but that's what the show depicted.
It's true. And I don't remember.
I never thought of Pat Riley as sounding flamboyant in any way. So
not at all. I think it was because he had long hair back then. His playing career with LA, he had long, floppy Pete Maravich type hair, and
he just didn't slick it back. He probably had long hair when he slicked it back too.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't get over what's his name, Adrian Brody, playing Pat Riley, because Brody is not a handsome man. And I always thought Pat Riley was a handsome man with the slick back hair, expensive suits and stuff. And Brody with that big crooked nose of his.
That mustache was horrible.
Oh my goodness, that's horrible. But it was an interesting part of the show. All right, I want to bring in a guy who everybody in the chat room is chanting for. They're going, Tooch, Tooch, Tooch. Tooch. And so let's bring him in now.
Well, let me ask both of you all a question, and
Sure.
I'll get in the back seat.
Okay.
Because both of you all are from Illinois, even though Tooch isn't there now.
Mm-hmm.
And you all were both adults during the Jordan era.
Mm-hmm.
So did you all go to any of the finals games?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any memories you can share?
Yeah, well, let's have Tooch answer the question. You want to go to any of the Bulls games, the finals game?
I didn't. It was too expensive for me when I was, I don't know, it would have been my early 20s.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was very, very fortunate. I was working at McDonald's Corporation, and they owned one of the skyboxes, and it was a gorgeous skybox. It was right at center court, the second they've got 2 levels of skyboxes, and so I think ours was in the second level, and so I got access to a number of Bulls games, and one of them was one of the playoff games against the Knicks, and I'm forgetting which game it was. My memory of the game is a little sketchy right now. My memory of the overall experience and just feeling like I was, a big fucking shot, being there and eating free food and having celebrities come into our box and introduce themselves. I was a whirlwind. So unfortunately, I don't have a good story, but I did see a couple of games from that, or more than a couple of games from that skybox, and one of them was a playoff game.
Well, did you go to any of the finals, though?
Never to one of the finals, no. My wife did, which I am really pissed off that they invited her and did not invite me. We were dating at the time. And so I was like, well, did it ever cross your mind that you say, hey, I know somebody who would enjoy this more, and Aldo works so hard over here. But She didn't do that. She wanted to go and get the free food and drink and hang out with superstars. So, no, I never went to a finals game. All right. Tooch, I am asking you here for a number of reasons. First of all, to see that beautiful face of yours that a lot of people think. What is it? Who's the actor you get most comparisons to?
I've gotten Robert De Niro a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Robert De Niro with a thyroid problem. But I wanted to get your take. We were talking earlier about Bears free agents that you or anybody thinks that perhaps Ryan Poles should have gone after. You have a take on that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, well, first of all, I think the Bears are bipolar. You know, all this stuff like rubs off. Okay, it's like we get these emotional highs of Larry Ogunjobi, you know, and then all of a sudden I failed his physical. Crap. You know, we're gonna have this dynamic. You know, it's so Bears. You know, I don't know whether these events just stand out to guys like you and me and Dan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Dave McGinnis. We signed Dave McGinnis to be our head coach. You know, these kind of things just continue. Like Dan was saying, these kind of things just seem to always happen to us. You know, and I know Greg Gabriel explained it very well, but this is just part. You know, they agree to terms. He comes in, he takes his physical, and if he doesn't pass the physical, there's no deal. You know, that's it. You know, but the guy that we signed in lieu of Ogunjobi, Justin Jones, pretty good player with the Chargers. You know, so we didn't lose too much ground there. But some guy, there's a lot of chat in the chat room, a lot of talk about signing cornerbacks and safeties because we are thin there. You know, and I've been talking about the Honey Badger for a while because he makes plays. He's a great tackler, and Ryan Poles has been talking to him. So this is like a little.
Have there been reports that Poles and Tyrann have been talking?
What someone said in the chat room that Poles was talking to Tyrann Mathieu, who is only 29 years old. Yeah, you know, that's not old for a safety. You know, and then I would have liked to have seen the Bears go after some cornerback like Carlton Davis or J.C. Jackson. Carlton Davis didn't sign for much. I think it was like $15 million a year, 3 years, 45 to go back with the Buccaneers. And then J.C. Jackson got a huge contract with the Patriots. And I think Dante Jackson is still out there. Stephon Gilmore's still out there. Of course, Gilmore's 31, has lost a step. Probably still could you know, play cornerback for the Bears for a year or two.
See, I don't know about that. I had seen Gilmore's name brought up a couple of times, and I just feel like he is on the downside of his career. He had those fabulous seasons with the Patriots. I think he's the type of guy that Poles doesn't want to bring into the organization. These guys who are, you know, he wants guys who are ascending or have something to prove and get a one-year bridge contract, but not necessarily a guy who, you know, doesn't have it to prove it. You know, I don't think Gilmore, in my assessment, will ever be anywhere near the player that he was. And so what Poles is looking for are equanimous St. Browns that he can bring in at less than $1 million. His contract is $980,000. And Equanimous has the possibility of being a 40, 50 pass catching wide receiver with breakaway ability to get, you know, 5 yards after the catch. So, you know, I think that's what Poles is looking for. I'd be shocked if he signed a veteran. You know, one of these. I would frankly be surprised if he signed the Badger. I think he's kind of fits into that guy who's going into the downside of his career. Maybe I'm wrong.
I people in the chat room don't like how without last year. Kansas City's defense took a noticeable downturn without Tyrann Mathieu in the lineup. Then when he came back, they started to make a little bit of a run at the end and stopping teams instead of, you know, giving up, you know, a lot of points in their games, the Chiefs. But for a year or two, maybe 3 years, it wouldn't be bad. You know, we gotta have people back there. What are we only have 6 draft picks? We can't fix everything in the draft. We have to sign free agents.
Yeah, and Greg Gabriel says now with the signing of Muhammad, who's a guy that I like, this defensive end, And I was really impressed with his reaction to the facilities that Hal saw. It was like he was saying, "This is unbelievable how great this is." But the point being that Greg Gabriel said that that acquisition means that he doesn't have inside information on this, but he is not going to be surprised if the Bears trade Robert Quinn. And if they can get another second rounder and a mid or late rounder for him, you might see Poles pull the trigger. And at first I thought, absolutely not. You need some guy to pass rush. But the more and more I look at Poles' plan, I mean, this is a complete nuclear bombing of the roster. There's Rick Morrissey of one of the Chicago newspapers wrote a column saying that Poles is showing and that he is not necessarily in love with Justin Fields, and that he is leaving things open.
A lot like our chat room.
Yeah. Prove yourself, Justin, and I will then fall in love with you. I mean, and I agree with that approach. This wasn't your quarterback, and maybe you would have picked, the guy that went to New England. I doubt it, but you guys still got to prove it. Now, he's on the roster. He's got a lot of physical skills. He certainly looks the part. So you want to give him all of the assets necessary to make his transition to a starter in the NFL as easy as possible. But yeah, you still got to prove it. You still got to go out there and do it. So
let me give you another name. This guy would fit good in a 4-3 defense. It might not cost that much. He's only 25 years old, and he was on the Eagles last year. Eagles drafted him out of Tennessee. He was one of Tennessee's all-time sack leaders. Dude's name is Derek Barnett, natural pass rusher. And the Eagles just signed Hassan Reddick to a big contract to be their pass rusher. So, I mean, now that we're transitioning to a 4-3 more, this is a guy that you could plug in it and, even at least rotational, and with better coaching, perhaps he could become a good part of the defense. But that's a guy I would like to see them maybe kick the tires on.
Yeah. Dan, what do you think? Would you trade Robert Quinn and try to acquire more draft assets?
I mean, if it's like for a 5th round pick, no. If they could get something crazy like a second, then maybe. I kind of hope that Quinn's still here, because the blind optimist, unlike the guy on Twitter who thinks I'm the worst person in the world, and the most negative or what have you. I honestly think the Bears can compete this year, because I do think Fields is going to take that next step and show people that he's the real deal. So I'd like to see Quinn here, but if you traded him for a 2nd round pick, I wouldn't be mad.
Yeah. PJ said a 2nd rounder and a 7th rounder, and he would be happy. And frankly, I would too. I would love to try to get a 6th rounder out of it. Because once you get to the 7th round, it's almost like the guys, there are undrafted free agents that you can have that are as good as 7th rounders. But then again, if this draft is as deep as they say, then maybe you do want to have 7th round picks, so that way you have access to these guys that the general managers are going to be scrambling for after the draft is over, making calls to try to sign all these free agents. So, if the Bears had 3 2nd rounders, that would mean they would have 3 picks in the top 64 picks. That would be pretty effing awesome. None of them in the 1st round, but maybe, if there's a 1st rounder that falls to late in the 1st rounder, maybe you could package those 2 of those 2nd rounders and move up and pick your next starting left offensive tackle, or your next starting cornerback to team with Jalen Johnson. So I've started to kind of warm to the idea of trading Quinn, given that this team is just being rebuilt, man, and we're just going to have faith that Poles knows what he's doing.
I think the chat room's talking a lot about Eric Fisher, who was on the Colts last year. Who Eberflus probably knows pretty well, knows his character. He's only 31 years old, more of a right tackle than a left tackle, but could be counted on to play left tackle as well.
He was at Kansas City in the 2020 season.
He
and
was in Kansas City too.
Got suffered, I think, a serious Achilles injury and wasn't available to the Colts until like the middle of last season. So both Poles and Eberflus know him. And the sad thing, though, is that it appeared that last year, although he played adequate enough, it seems like he's not the player he was with Kansas City. And so who knows whether he'll ever be able to play at that level.
Sounds like a third wave free agent, Brian Poles.
That's right.
Right.
Oh man. Anybody else?
We'll call him while he's out fishing.
Yes. By the way, I saw the name of Jason Peters in the chat room. Would you guys be against Jason Peters coming back as a bridge left tackle while the Bears get their shit together?
You could do a lot worse.
I thought he played pretty well.
Yeah, so did I.
He seemed to get better as the season wore on. My biggest complaint was he failed to get to the second level and really pick up on his man and make a efficient block at the second level. But as the year went on, he was like, "I'll show you, fucking Aldo," and he was making those blocks. So he is not the fleet-footed offensive lineman that the Bears are trying to build this offensive line too. But if you can't find that left tackle to do that, and if they're not sold that Tevin Jenkins or even Larry Borum is that guy, maybe Peters is a 1-year stopgap. I wouldn't say it. So Fisher is a right tackle. He played left tackle his entire career, Tooch. That is correct. I want to say that PJ is correct.
I mean, like maybe now, I don't know if he can handle left tackle, anymore after his injury. That's what I'm trying to say, but
yeah,
who knows?
And what do you guys think about the anti-vaccine guy, Cole Beasley? Greg Gabriel loves the idea of bringing him in because as a slot receiver, he could be that dependable guy.
How old is he, though?
He's 30 or 31, I believe.
Yeah, he's not that old.
Yeah.
He was playing in the game where Brandon Marshall got hurt. His last game as a Bear in 2014 against Dallas on a Thursday night.
I think he's 31.
He was in the league 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So
trying to find out his age right now.
Mule says Cole Beasley would be a good pickup as a veteran wide receiver for Fields. Yeah, it's like they told us, they being Eberflus in the polls, is that they've done research into what second-year quarterbacks need most in this league, and the answer was a very reliable player to connect with on those third down situations, 3rd and 7 where you need to pick up a first down. And so, we saw Darnell Mooney be kind of Justin Fields' guy for that last season, but a slot player that can get open and pick up yards after the catch, Cole Beasley might be the best one right now. Although Byron Pringle played the majority of his snaps for the Chiefs last year at the slot position. I think it was like 60% of his snaps he lined up at that slot position. So I think the Bears are going to have some really nice options at people who could be a slot receiver if they bring in a Cole Beasley. Then they can put Darnell Mooney in there sometimes. Then they can put Pringle in there sometimes. And that's, to me, that and having a good tight end, those to me are the best security blankets you can give a quarterback, because you can find those guys over the middle real quick.
I looked it up. Beasley's 32.
Okay.
Julio's 33.
Oh, wow.
I would much rather have Julio Jones, but I'm afraid he's going to run to Tampa Bay and try to get a ring or something like that, or Kansas City.
Which he should, right? I mean, come on. The guy's been a great player his career. He should go to a contender. Sign Bobby.
Maybe we can build a contender here.
And not with Julio Jones. He's got a year or two left. A T3P podcast says no more old players. So I kind of agree with him. Let's go young. Let's have.
Well, if you were going to sign Cole Beasley, like Julio's only a year older.
I hear you. But Julio is that wide out, and he needs to beat zones and one-on-one coverage. Well, Cole Beasley, he's a proficient slot guy who's going to run those crossing patterns and just get open all the time. Julio Jones is going to the Hall of Fame probably. Cole Beasley is the only way he's going to the Hall of Fame is if he buys a ticket. So, I get what you're saying, Dan, and Dan's been right more often than not. I mean, he was 2 years ago. He's telling me we should go after Leonard Fournette. He's a free agent. I'm going, you don't need Leonard Fournette. Come on, he's washed up anyways. He's always getting hurt and so forth. And what happens? He fucking becomes an integral part of the Tampa Bay Bucks winning a Super Bowl. So
it's a bowling ball, man. I like backs like that.
Yeah,
like the one that was always in New England.
Mm-hmm.
He went to Detroit. LeGarrette Blount. Like when he was young, I love backs like that can just run your ass over big bowling balls.
Yeah.
Jeremy, like that's why I like Jordan Howard.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what's weird about Jordan Howard? He's never had that success outside of the Dow Loggins offense. You know, he went to Philadelphia and they got some juice out of him. They got some yardage out of that guy. But you know, it is true about some of these running backs, man. They're prime time years are 2 or 3, 4 years tops. And look at Saquon Barkley. I mean, has he ever lived up to?
He's been hurt a lot, though.
Yeah, Tucci, you know this from fantasy football. Did he ever have like
He had like one good year. You know,
Yeah.
Jordan Howard would kill in San Francisco. One cut. You know,
Mhm. Yeah.
if Jordan Howard went to the 49ers, you know, he could have a revive his career.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you the guy that I liked, and it's to your point, Aldo, that he's an example of like, he was good for like 2 years, was Jay Ajayi.
Yeah.
The guy that was in Miami and then went to Philly and won a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he was just a run your ass over kind of dude with Miami, and you just looked thick as fuck, you know, he's gonna run you over, carry 3 guys with him, and he's out of the league, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is out of the league right now. I think he had some
He had some
problems,
injury issues.
Yeah, and didn't he have some problems with the law too? Maybe I'm wrong. I should check that out before I put that out there.
He had kind of like a O.J. Anderson lower body, you know.
Yeah.
Remember O.J. Anderson looked like he had these?
Oh yeah, MVP of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, oversized football pants.
Yeah, I'm confused a bit here. It says here from an article dated January 30th, 2019. The headline is Eagles Jay Ajayi being sued? ? Here are the details about the alleged shoplifting incident. So I won't read the whole thing, but so he's had some issues. So if he's out of the league, it might also be for character purposes. But again, I'm just speculating there. There was a question earlier about wasn't Julio Jones involved in that one play that would have been a touchdown it was a big playoff game or a game late in the season, and he didn't turn around and look for the ball, and the ball was thrown by the quarterback, and it was an interception. I don't know. I don't remember. Okay, here's what I was thinking about from J Rock. I like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, but not for $9 million a year, which is what Spotrac has listed his market value. So I put out on Twitter, do you think that given that the wide receiver market is what it is, that he is worth $9 million or more or less? And we got a lot of responses. The majority was definitely below. And Greg Gabriel confirmed that, saying there's no way he's going to get $9 million a year, which means probably the reason that he hasn't been signed yet is that he's trying to get $9 million and he's not getting an offer anywhere near that. So do you think that he's going to go back to Green Bay and try to play under Aaron Rodgers and get those stats up now that the Devontae Adams is not there? Maybe sign a 1-year contract with the Packers so that in 2023 he is then a highly prized or sought after free agent? Or do you think he might want to come to the Chicago Bears for $3 or $4 million and fight for that number 1 job and not have to worry about Aaron Rodgers' bullshit stuff that is always fucking ruining the clubhouse atmosphere? Anyway,
we didn't.
Sounds good to me. I'm on board.
Dan's opinion on Devontae Adams leaving the Packers.
Yeah, Devontae.
I'm happy. I will confess to you, I said on your very airwaves 3-4 years ago that I wasn't interested in him because he dropped too many passes.
Yeah.
That's when he was a free agent, because we were asking at the time on 100 Proof, should the Bears go after him? I was like, no, this dude drops too many passes. He really told me to shut the fuck up with his last deal. He excelled far beyond my expectations. I hope he continues that up with the Raiders now that we don't have to see him. Best of luck. I'm glad he's gone. I hope Rodgers. You got the linebacker that just was going to go to Baltimore and is now talking shit about him. So I like the fact that it just seems like everyone's pointing a finger at him now. So I hope that the Scantling guy does come here and says, yeah, he's a fucking dick, man. I came to Chicago to get away from that shit. Or maybe I'm writing a narrative that isn't there, but that's the one I want to be there.
I hear you. I'll tell you, it's going to be interesting to see if Davante has that same connection with Derek Carr, his longtime friend, that he developed with Aaron Rodgers. By the way, there was something about Aaron Rodgers that I wanted to talk about. I thought I wrote in my notes, but I don't see it. Did you send me something, Dan, about Aaron Rodgers further illustrating what a cock he is?
It was a meme with that linebacker.
Okay.
The guy that they cut.
Yeah. Saying that he didn't want that drama and that Davante Adams. Yeah, that's what it was. You're absolutely right. What you just said. Davante Adams going over to the Raiders, probably a good idea, because he doesn't have to sit in the locker room and listen to all that drama that his quarterback brings to the team. Here's the quote. Yeah.
Here's the quote. Seeing Kirk talking about Cousins,
right?
They're working with his KJ and Adam really reassured me. He's not sitting on some YouTube channel creating drama.
Right.
He's putting in the work because he sees a weak NFC North, and so do I. Zadarius Smith.
That is Zadarius Smith that said that indeed. Yep. And he was one of the guys that you guys were interested in maybe being a Chicago Bear. Oops, sorry about that. Didn't you say that to me, Dan, that you were kind of looking forward to him maybe being entertained by the Chicago Bears?
I don't think so, but I'm not opposed to the idea, especially if you're going to, if you're going to dump Robert Quinn, you got to sign somebody.
Yeah. Well, he's a Viking now. So, the one thing about the signings by the Packers and the Vikings, none of them really scare me. And like you said, Dan, this division really is wide open. The Bears could potentially steal it, but right now I'm not seeing a roster that can contend for the division championship under normal circumstances. And you know what? Rodgers, I read an article today that the Packers are probably going to be more of a short passing offense, more of a run offense. Aaron Jones, the starting running back for the Packers, should probably be considered as the number one overall fantasy draft pick because I
call bullshit on this.
Well, the Packers are going to have to rely on their running backs. They got that big power back, the A.J. Dillon, and they got the starter, Aaron Jones. I think that without Davante Adams,
he will not allow this to happen.
Being Aaron Rodgers?
He will not. He's the fucking coach. He's the GM. He's LeBron in it.
You're right.
If the GM thought that he was the boss, or that little boy, the head coach, thinks he's the boss. Rodgers' $150, $200 million contract says otherwise.
Yeah.
He's the boss. He's not going to allow them to make him irrelevant. He's going for another MVP. You talk about a person that pads their stats. That's what people accuse Stafford of for so long. That's Aaron Rodgers, man.
Yeah. I agree with you. I agree that his reputation is much more important to him than winning Super Bowls and in some cases winning games. I mean, he cries a lot when they don't win. But I think that given that he could have helped the team re-sign Davante Adams, he could have called Davante and said, listen, they're offering me $50 million. For 3 years. I told them, no fucking way I'm going to sign for that if you're telling me that you can't sign Davante Adams to a long-term contract. Sign Davante Adams first and then tell me what is left and we'll go from there. But he didn't do that. You know why Tom Brady has 6 rings, or what is it, 6 or 7
Because he
rings?
played for less a lot.
Exactly. Throughout his career, he forfeited salary. And he would tell the Patriots, get me some receivers, and
get me Randy Moss.
Yeah. Well, and there was one season where he was pissed off, that they didn't do anything in the offseason to get a number one receiver, and he let them know. that's the thing. That's the huge difference between Rodgers and Brady. You know, Brady is a true leader, really plays for championships. Rodgers plays to get, you know, have enough money to have lifelong colonoscopy treatments or whatever the fuck he puts up his ass. So that let's see, it is 9:30, so we got another hour with Dan. What else regarding the Chicago Bears should we talk about? Somebody in the chat room brought up an interesting kind of debate question: is should the Bears sign David Montgomery to a long-term contract?
Yes.
Tell me why you feel that way.
Because I feel like he can catch the ball, he can run the ball, he can run people over. Like I told you, the kind of back I like, and he's not a huge guy like a LeGarrette Blount, but he can play large though, and shed tacklers. He can still juke and make moves too. He's a complete back, in my opinion. I know everyone loves Forte, and okay, he did put up some good stats. I've said it before. I think Montgomery is our best back since Thomas Jones, and I don't want him going to the Jets or someone like Jones did just to get rid of him because we got Cedric, you know, but he's dead, so let's not shit on him. But the point is, I think he's our guy. We drafted him. I know it's a different regime, but you know, you're bringing in a fullback this year. Let's go. Let's run the ball. Give him a deal, man. He's worth it.
Dude, somebody in the chat, Ravi, says that Bears fans tend to overvalue their own players and that Montgomery is a guy.
See, I agree with the premise that we overlove. I've always thought that about Allen Robinson, but I didn't want to come out and necessarily say it and get jeered to death on air. But like, there was no way I was wanting to give A-Rob 20 or 19 or $18 million a year. And frankly, I'm glad he didn't get that here. I don't think he's worth it. I'm not trying to besmirch him, but I just don't think he was worth it. So I get the overlove. I feel the same way about James Daniels being overloved. But I think David Montgomery is the exception there. I think David Montgomery is a solid back who would benefit from a real coach now and a real offensive scheme that will actually run the ball.
Yeah, and Tony Moy says, well, it kind of depends on how much Montgomery wants, you know. And I would hope that Montgomery, when and if and when contract negotiations open up, that he's not going to try to be the highest paid running back in football. You know, if he really wants to play for the Bears, he should take lesser money and maybe take it. You know, the big thing now is how much is guaranteed. And we're seeing more and more contracts moving from that 50-60% guaranteed to that 90 to 100% guaranteed. That's what you want. You want more guaranteed dollars. If you're going to sign a $20 million contract and 90% of it is guaranteed, as opposed to a $40 million contract and 50% of it is guaranteed, what do you think is better? I think Montgomery can help himself, help the Bears by playing ball, and you know, because it is. I think the prevailing thought by most organizations, we'll see how Polls is that running backs are easily replaceable, and for that matter, it's happening in the wide receiver position too. We're seeing a lot of teams now think, I can find a Darnell Mooney in the 4th or 5th round. I can find other quality wide receivers lower. Let's invest those high draft picks and those big money contracts on offensive and defensive linemen. And that's not a bad strategy to go about it, because the colleges are churning out more skilled players than they are players who play near the line of scrimmage. And so those players are harder to find, and maybe just you have to look at it that way. What do you guys think?
I think the best players that we have on our team, and I won't put Robert Quinn in there because he may not be there, but the guys that should be there in 2022, I think the best 3 guys we have are Roquan Smith, Justin Fields, and David Montgomery. So I would like to see Roquan and Montgomery taken care of. We've got Fields for at least 2 more years, ideally at least 3 more, because they'll have the option on him. But I just think those are your best guys, man. You bring your best guys back.
What about Khalil Herbert? Somebody posted a video on Twitter. I should have grabbed it. basically alleging that Khalil Herbert is going to be a better running back in this scheme, in this outside zone running scheme, than David Montgomery, who's more of a power back who runs in between the tackles straight ahead. And Khalil Herbert is that guy that's going to run outside and then pick that lane to cut, that make that one cut and pick up big yards. I think, first of all, it's great to have that power and lightning type of approach, so having both of them, at least for this season, is great. But do you think that Khalil Herbert could potentially be a number one wide receiver?
I mean, there's a possibility, especially if we let Montgomery walk, that by default he gets the job.
Mm-hmm.
But I just feel I could be proven wrong that David Montgomery is an asset.
Yeah. No,
and like you said, maybe in the offense, maybe he won't be. Maybe it won't be a fit. But I just thought that the previous staff didn't know what the fuck they were doing with anybody.
Right. They had no value for the running game. So,
or the pass or anything. Like, nobody had good stats. Look at Allen Robinson's stats last year. He's so much better than what he did on the field. We know Fields is, we think Fields is better than what he showed last year.
Mm-hmm.
There's one common denominator, the bald fuck that was calling the plays. And I think David Montgomery will show that he's a better back than he even got an opportunity to prove in that bullshit offense that we were running.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know we don't know how good David Montgomery could be. He works his ass off in the offseason, man. He did last year, and he came in, he played better than the year before. If he's working as hard as last year, he could be even better this year.
Mm-hmm.
He's at career highs this past year in yards and touchdowns, I think, right?
And he missed, 4 games?
Yeah.
I will say this. I agree with Mo Bierman, who says, let Monty play out his deal and see what happens. I agree with that. I think
that's what we said about Patrick O'Donnell, and he's punting in Green Bay now.
Yeah, that actually worries me, because who the fuck is going to punt? That's so important for a team.
And he's the holder.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, that is so important. You need a guy who does a great job of holding. And I think
Trevor Siemian is a holder, though, too, at least for extra points. Yeah.
Right. A lot of teams have the backup guy.
He and Cairo need to learn, to start hanging out immediately if he signed.
Then. Mm-hmm. I lost my thought. Regarding
who's going to punt for the Bears? This is so Bears that we don't even have a punter.
We don't have a punter. I mean, there's
and our punters with Green Bay.
Yeah.
No, you were asking about David Montgomery. Should we let him play out his deal and take a chance in losing him?
Yeah.
And I interrupted you and pointed out that's what we said about the punter.
Right. And I agree with that. I remember my point now. Thanks for that lead in, Dan. The biggest priority now in terms of re-signing people is Roquan Smith. And
agreed.
I think that the Bears really want to try to work something out, but it's Roquan and I think his mom who are negotiating the contract. And so I don't know where that is. Are those two qualified to do a good deal that is great for them and good for the club? Maybe they are. I don't know. I'm a big fan of agents, but I do know that if you take a unusual approach towards the contract negotiations, it could lead to some problems. I've never, ever, I don't recall ever reading a story where the general manager said, we really loved working with the player's family on getting this contract done. It's usually a general manager and an agent relationship that gets things done rather quickly. And there are, of course, exceptions. There are some agents that are assholes, and there are some general managers that are assholes. But I'm just a little bit worried that this should be done already. This Roquan should be signed for 5 years, $120 million, 80% guaranteed. Let's go, man. Let's and make it friendly, so that the Bears can have some more cap dollars in 2023 to really make a huge haul in free agency and sign some of their other younger players. Have money available for David Montgomery if you think that he should be with the Bears another 3-4 seasons. Got to re-sign Roquan and got to do it quickly.
I agree. I mean, worst case, you could franchise him, I guess, after this season. but I'd like to see him get the deal done before even going. I was about to say to Bourbonnais, but I guess Lake Forest is where they do camp now, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, it made me think of a different sport. But when you were talking about the negotiations and agents, it made me think. I mean, of course, I wasn't behind the scenes, but the story at the time that Derrick Rose was able to play, but his agent B.J. Armstrong was like, "No, bro, we don't want you playing," and he's like, "Oh, so I'm not going to play." That's what it made me think of, like the ordeal that he put the Bulls through circa 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want that from Roquan's mom, some bizarre shit. Like, don't take this deal, honey, you know?
Yeah, that is so effing true. I mean, I was actually sharing that story with my wife yesterday or a couple of days ago when talking about mistakes that the Bears have done. Somebody asked the question, should the Bears going to draft a punter in the draft? And it's not unheard
We already did that with O'Donnell.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I was so excited because the guy was a phenomenal athlete, but didn't exactly come off to a flying start with the Bears, but they had patience with him, and this guy deserved to re-sign again. Guys who can punt well at Soldier Field are important. Tooch has put out, we spent a second-round pick on Todd fucking Sauerbrunn, and then the team duct taped him to the goalpost.
West Virginia's own Todd Sauerbrunn, whom I hated.
Yeah, he was apparently a huge asshole.
He had a 97-yard punt. Of course, it rolled, but that's what got him his notoriety. But
he showed up to training camp, and his license plate said "hang time."
In the pros, the thing I remember the most, other than him being a massive bust, was in the paper in 2007. He was like Devin Hester, and he punted to Devin Hester twice in the third quarter of the game at Soldier Field when the Broncos came in, and in back-to-back punts, Devin took it to the house.
Yeah,
and one of them he leapt over Sauerbrunn trying to make the tackle.
Oh man.
I can't remember who the GM was that spent a second-round pick on a punter. Fucking,
that would have been Hatley, right?
Was it Hatley?
Yeah,
That's fucking unforgivable.
Yeah, I'll have to ask Greg about that.
Yeah.
I guess the whole idea was at the time that Wani could utilize him for coffin corners situations at Soldier Field, and in theory that sounds good, but not for a second-round pick.
Right.
That sounds like something the Raiders would have done when Al was like really old. You know, they did spend a first-rounder on Janikowski, but at least he proved to be worthy of that.
He might be a Hall of Famer, Janikowski.
Yeah,
he should be.
He played into his 40s.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I saw his last kick was in that playoff game. He was with the Seahawks against Dallas and like blew his knee out on a kick. I was like, well, that's that. His career's over. Then I had to play the rest of the game without a kicker.
Some of the punters that are coming out in the college, there's, of course, everybody's talking about Matt Arizea. This guy is a phenomenal athlete. He's ranked overall, he's ranked like 150th, which means he's probably going to get drafted in the third or fourth round, early day 3. But there are some other really good punters coming out. Jordan Stout over at Penn State, a 6'3" kid who had outstanding numbers at Penn State. Ryan Stonehouse, who kicked that Colorado stat, so maybe some of his stats are inflated a little bit because of the air quality up there, but he's highly regarded coming into this draft. And then the other guy who I think is getting a lot of acclaim is the kid from Illinois here in Champaign. Yeah, 6'6", 225-pounder Blake Hayes. So there's some guys those guys could all be drafted, but some of those guys might not be. And so it's a rush to the telephone and make a good offer to bring in the guy. But the Bears will have to bring in if they are going to go that route, they'll also have to bring in a veteran to compete with that guy. I'm just chuckling here because Joe says, Aldo, you have that stoner grin. Yes, I do. I know. It's years and years as a teenager. I used to smoke an ounce of marijuana a week. Is that a lot? Tooch, you used to deal drugs.
I mean, if you shared with friends, probably
Oh,
not.
I didn't.
Okay.
I was the guy that said, I ran out, man. And I run around the corner and light one up for myself. No, I'm kidding. By the way, Dan, you never smoked marijuana, right?
Never.
Never. Tooch, you did, right?
A lot.
Did you ever used to do shotguns? You know, when you put the marijuana cigarette in your mouth and then you exhale the smoke out to a recipient who then.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so those are called shotguns. And then somebody came up with the idea of the airplane shotgun, which you are then, both of you are crouched down. And then while you're doing the shotgun, you stand up. And then while the guy is standing up, he's against the wall and you push his chest in. You were supposed to get a really intense rush. Well, I did that a couple of times, but the third time I did it, the guy passed out. I mean, he went down, bam! His head hit the concrete, and I'm thinking to myself, I just killed this guy. I'm going to go to fucking jail for the rest of my life. And I'm just praying to God, please, God, despite the fact that I'm agnostic most of the time, please, God, please, get up. And finally, his eyes open, he got up, and he was all right. But there it is. I'm bearing my soul. See what you missed, Dan?
Yeah, like I said, my dad had a drug problem. So
yeah,
you know.
I know.
I know weed's a lot different than hard drugs, but still, it wasn't to him. You know, weed was. I don't think that it's a. You know, the thing like somebody smokes weed, then instantly they go to something else, like the gateway drug. But it was for him though, and we have the same bloodline.
So you've always been careful because of that.
Yeah, I mean, he would smoke weed, and it inevitably would lead to, like, his big thing was acid. Like, he would eat those pieces of paper, the LSD.
Yeah, I did that.
And that's when domestics would occur and violence and things like that. I always resented it.
Yeah.
I always resented it. And when he was straight, trying not to do drugs, he got heavily religious, which seemed pretentious to me at the time, too. So I resented that too. Like, he would make us listen to the Bible on audio cassette tape, and he would write it down. It would annotate the Bible, like the whole fucking thing. So he was obsessive in those regards, and I think I got a lot of those same traits. I mean, just look at, I'm obsessive with the Bears, or with my music, and so I think in a lot of ways I'm the same guy. So if I were on the same drugs, I would behave the same way in certain instances, I think. And I don't want to be like that. So that's why I don't do drugs.
How old is Foster?
Foster's my age.
Is he? Okay.
And he's right. Back then, when I used to buy an ounce, it was $40 actually. An ounce of Colombian gold, and I had it all perfectly mapped out. I would buy it on Friday. And then by Friday morning, I didn't have a single strain of marijuana left. It was, I couldn't wait till I would get my check and then run over to this guy's house and buy another ounce for the week. And then, Dan, I used to do acid too. And a lot of people are writing down, blotter, purple sunshine, orange sunshine, whatever it was called. I tried all that shit out, man. And I think I finally gave it up when I thought that Fred Flintstone was in my bedroom talking to me. And I said, okay, this is enough of that. Stopped doing acid right after that. Fred Flintstone.
And then a bunch of acid at the REM concert.
A toy or something.
That's right. Fred Flintstone and Barney.
That would have been horrible.
And Barney Rubble running a train on me. That
sodomizing you with.
Did any of you guys see REM in concert?
Never.
No,
never.
I did a bunch of acid. That was an awesome concert, by the way. The American Beatles.
So many shows. Oh, go ahead, too. It's my bad. Go ahead. I thought your story. I didn't know you were going deeply into the story. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was I forget the name of the album, but it had what was it? Orange Crush song on it. That was the tour. That I can't remember the name of the album, but great show. And after so much acid, there was like a million Michael Stipes singing in my head.
Oh my God.
But great show though.
See, that's what my point was going to be. When I go to a concert, or I still need to watch that John Oliver piece that you told me about. I've got it on my TiVo. With concert tickets being so much now, and sporting events being so much, I don't want to pay. Like if we went to a Bears game this year, it's for 3 tickets could cost us $1,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You know, do I want to waste $1,000 and get high or drunk and not even remember the experience? Fuck no.
Yeah.
I'm sober when I go to these events.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the big part of that story is that agencies like Ticketmaster, who have kind of a monopoly on tickets, they're now into the practice of purchasing a big contingent of their tickets that they sell, and then they resell them in the reseller market, making more money, which is just, to me, that should be illegalized. Just should be illegalized.
StubHub started doing that, and then that was their answer to StubHub.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. You're absolutely right. But why are you now limiting the amount of tickets that you have been charged with selling for the organization, and you buying them back and selling them back? That doesn't make any sense to me.
It does. It is fucked up.
Yeah, it's like, why? How much is enough, guys? What? Can't you stop putting the little guy in financial ruin because you're trying to squeeze out a few more bucks?
And the way they do it now, like let's say for example. Okay, so it's about to be here 11 p.m. East and Central. Let's say for just for the fucking hypothetical, the Bears single game tickets were going on sale in 7 minutes, and all of us were logged in. We're like, all right, one of us will be able to get the tickets, right? One of us will. Chances are, in 7 minutes, all 3 of our phones are going to say, "You're in a waiting room. There's 2,000 people ahead of you. You're in queue." That's the way they do it now. Versus 2002, you got on, first come, first serve. You buy your tickets, you're happy. They put you in a waiting room right now and just tell you that you're in queue. And it's supposed to be totally random, but is it? It probably isn't.
Yeah,
the fucking scalpers probably get them first.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right. There was one other Bears topic I wanted to talk about besides Roquan Smith's contract. I'm beginning to believe that Eddie Jackson is a goner.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think that this next wave of players, June 1st, these post June 1st cuts, I think you're going to see a lot of big name players cut then. And maybe Eddie Jackson's name is going to be included in that. And they're also going to they're going to be players available to the Chicago Bears that could help them fill some holes. And they might be guys who go against the plan of younger, cheaper players and be older, more expensive guys, or trying to get bigger contracts like they had with the team that just released them. And that the Bears are probably going to dip into that pool because they got to fill out a roster. Geez, you need 90 guys in a month for OTAs or 2 months for OTAs. So, and so as I was thinking about it and looking over the roster, I think given that Eddie Jackson has become such a divisive figure, and I would just never forgive him for allowing himself to be caught on camera saying anybody can do tackling, nobody can get turnovers, and then not delivering on any one of those two things. I'm sure that has not been lost on this Bears brain trust. They're going to find a way to get rid of him, but they've now, we've got to replace 2 safeties. Gibson, who is gone, Deshaun Gibson, although he is still out in the market, he could resign, and the potential loss of Eddie Jackson. You guys, I'm sure, are going to all agree, yeah, get the fuck out of here, Eddie Jackson.
Yeah, don't forget George, like the year before, he called out Anthony Miller for the playoff game, and Anthony Miller was gone. He called out Eddie Jackson without saying his name, talking about how pissed off he was about how the safeties don't touch receivers when they're down.
Great point.
So George has probably told him, get this guy out of here.
Yeah, and I know it's a risky move, and Greg Gabriel has told us on his show, Eddie Jackson does a lot more than just miss tackles, but he calls the defensive plays for the defensive backfield, and that's really important. But this is a new coaching staff. They don't give a shit about Eddie Jackson's value with that. I think their first goal is to create a culture. And do you think that Eddie Jackson is going to abide by this hit philosophy that they bring in? First of all, the H is hitting, right?
If we were texting, I could send you the laugh out loud emoji or something.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because he's not a hitter. He's fragile. He doesn't like contact.
It doesn't,
Which is the position that he plays dictates that he likes to hit. And he doesn't.
Right. And that's the thing too, is I don't understand why they decided to sign this guy when the defense was moving towards safeties that can play free and strong safety. He's a free safety. He's a center field safety. That's when he plays his best. When he gets anywhere near the line of scrimmage or anywhere near the responsibility of having to tackle is when he gets the heebie-jeebies and he just doesn't get the job done.
He makes Deion Sanders look like Ronnie Lott. Deion hated tackling. He makes him look like a ferocious Ronnie Lott. I'll cut my finger off for you.
Yeah.
He just does not like contact at all.
How true is that? How true is that? And you know what? He is a small guy. Greg Bragg and I went to a charity softball tournament that he had in Schaumburg, and we got an interview with Eddie, and I told Greg, you go ahead and interview him. And Greg is probably 5'11", and he's towering over Eddie. And Greg at the time, I think he's lost a lot of weight since then, but at the time Greg was like 250 and Eddie Jackson's like 185, 190. It just looked like Greg could easily. Greg is a brick layer, so he's got strong hands. He's a strong guy. I think he could have picked up Eddie Jackson and just landed him onto the baseball field. We were actually interviewing within the dugout. Actually, he probably could have really put the hurt on Eddie Jackson.
Greg is probably tougher.
Yeah, I bet he is.
Yeah.
But I got a feeling that Eddie Jackson's days with the Chicago Bears might be numbered. So if it happens, you heard it here first. If it doesn't happen, you didn't hear it here at all.
I don't even care if he runs the Green Bay. That's how much I just think that he's done. Like he got paid. He did make some turnovers, a lot of turnovers in 2018. He got paid, and he got really, really soft after he got paid. And it's easy for me to call someone soft when I'm sitting in a chair. Maybe that's not the way I should word it, because I don't mean to be disrespectful. Again, I'll go back to Rocky III. Mm-hmm. He does not have the eye of the tiger anymore. Mm-hmm. He's not Mr. T running in the ghetto. He's Rocky after he's paid and complacent.
Yeah, exactly. That is unfortunately the thing with the NFL. I would love to see, now I know these guys are putting their lives on the line, but I would like to see more 1-year contracts with people with options to increase the contract. I hate the fact in any sport, when somebody signs a long-term contract and all of a sudden they go from that great player who's trying to earn a long-term contract to that, I'm set kind of guy, and I'm not going to play as hard as I did before because I got my money. That
you
happens
think Khalil
a lot
Mack
in sports.
was like that?
I don't think so. I do really believe that Khalil, because he gets chipped and blocked and harassed so much, I really do believe that his body is just starting to fail him. But I really trust that he wants to win. He wants to be great. But his body is just said, I can't do it anymore. So we'll see what happens in San Diego. I always felt like the Bears have done a poor job at, just like with Pernell McPhee, I said earlier in the show, they need to do more rotations on the defensive line. And guys like Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn, those guys are pass rushers first and foremost. The idea of dropping them into coverage is ridiculous. They should be out on most first down plays, or one of them should be out on most first down plays, getting rest so that they're as strong late in the game as possible. And that just never happened. I mean, you look at all the, Dan is famous for saying that the Bears defense is going on siesta again, and it's true. And I think it was just because player rotation was handled so poorly by guys.
The game from last season that was the most Bears siesta of them all.
Mm-hmm.
You get that big touchdown from Dalton to Goodwin against the Ravens, and you think, oh man, it's like 30 seconds to go. Mm-hmm. We've won. Mm-hmm. Well, he threw a fourth down. It was the Hail Mary. He caught it. It's a touchdown. And they let some guy that's never played before.
Mm-hmm.
Jackson wasn't even playing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was, of course, every time we play a backup, they suddenly have the best game of their lives.
Yeah.
And of course, the Bears blow the Ravens game, which is just asinine.
Yeah, crazy. All right, in this last half hour, while we got Dan on the line here, let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we've seen. I want to do a quick recommendation. We have Comcast Xfinity here at home, and they provided us with a 1 week free of Apple TV. We don't have the device at home to access. Yeah, we got it. And so
nice. Love Apple TV.
Yeah, my wife and I did a binge of the morning show with Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon playing television host reporters for a morning show. And the premise of the show is that Jennifer Aniston's character was the co-host of a morning show with Steve Carell. And Carell is fired at the very beginning of the show for sexual harassment. Some women have come forward and accused him of harassment, and he is standing firm. I did not do this. This was consensual. These women and I, and it's a really, really compelling story from that standpoint alone. And there's other sub stories that make the thing very, very watchable. But one of the things that I think was interesting is that the culture at this place of business, and it happens at TV stations, it's happened in places that I've worked and so forth, is that it was a fairly promiscuous environment. Women touching men, women flirting with men, and vice versa. Now, I'm not saying, that it's right. I'm saying that when you have that kind of environment, then maybe the character of Steve Carell was right. This was consensual because everybody was doing it on some level of flirting and so forth. Now, as the episodes go on, you get some different perspectives on things, and I'm not going to give anything away. But it does bring to light a problem that a lot of people don't talk about is, man, when I worked at McDonald's corporate offices and their creative services, I was a fucking great looking guy. And there were women who were saying, man, I want to get me a piece of that. And, I felt like a piece of meat and I loved it. But the point I'm trying to get across is throughout my life, I have been exposed to workplaces where it was men and women going at each other with sexual advances. And so I highly recommend season 1 of the morning show because it might give you a look at this complex problem of allegations of sexual impropriety in a different way. So that's my recommendation.
If I could segue off of that,
please.
That was the big, like a subtopic on the Uber show this week.
Yes, it was. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm super pumped. And I have to say, man, he failed.
Mm-hmm.
Again, for more than 3 weeks or so, I've told you how much I didn't like the main character anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And he gives this speech like, oh, I'm going to decimate him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to fucking destroy him now. Thank you for telling me this. And does nothing about it. And when the girl complains that he's retaliating essentially because he's mad now,
mm-hmm.
he's like, what do you want me to do? Fire him? I mean, we all are assholes here.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so you didn't do anything. And then the other girl's getting it too. So she goes to the other woman and tells her about it because thinking, well, you'll be able to empathize with me. And she's like, well, you got to suck it up. Where are you working? So then it just trickles down the way they talk about economics, but it trickles down within that culture that it permeates that it's okay to make advances toward women that make them uncomfortable.
That was an incredible scene when the woman goes to the other woman and says, I need help here. And she said what you just said, you chose to work here, which implied,
well, you got to take it.
Exactly. And that woman still works at Uber and is a revered person. So it's interesting that she was part of the leadership,
the culture that allowed this to just transpire.
Exactly. So, it's a very, very complicated story. Now, I am always going to side with listening to all accusers and giving them their fair share, but there are also other extenuating circumstances. And so, it doesn't make stuff right. You know, if you work in a culture like that, you should know, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be, you know, in engaging in that kind of activity. When I worked at McDonald's and these women would flirt with me, I would flirt back, you know? And then, you know, there were a couple of them that said, hey, yeah, we want to get together tonight. And then I was like, I got to go.
The only time, maybe I'm not trying to make myself into a great guy here, because I'm not bullshitting you.
Mm-hmm.
I think this could be a guideline that all men utilize.
Mm-hmm.
You can't touch the woman assuming that they want it.
Right.
Like the guy grabs her ass and then he says, oh, I was drunk. Like, to me as the guy, I can't touch another woman unless, you know, if I'm dating them and I know that it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
If I've already hit it and I know it's okay, then that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've never been together, you should just assume you can't touch them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Another quick story is one of my first professional jobs. I was working for an energy company in their creative services department. And I was like a 19-year-old kid. I was still going to college and working as a production assistant at this place. And one of the producers had to do a casting call for a project they were doing for HR, which was about sexual harassment, things you can do and say and things you can't do and say. So this guy, he says, yeah, I want you to come over for the casting session and take notes. And so, all right, sure, you know, and he had done a cattle call, which is what's called in the business. You bring in all sorts of talent and you have them talk. He had brought in every sexy actress in Chicago, big bosom women and blondes and all. And he was essentially doing what the HR video told him not to. He would tell them to stand up and twirl around and can you jiggle a little bit and so forth. He was awful. And I was like, yeah, I'm liking this. You know, this is pretty cool. I like this job. Anyway.
Well, on the episode again, I think that this was the best one because it bookended the beginning of it with Joseph Gordon-Levitt talking about boober.
Yes.
as he, within the context, the reporters seemed to be trying to get him to say it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas he was like, oh, the women really do like you though, don't they?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it was like she was leading him that way and wanted a disgusting quote, and he gave it to her.
Mm-hmm.
But so you bookend the episode with like the boober comment and then the allegations of sexual harassment in the middle and in the end. I thought the way they structured the episode, it was the best one yet. And I thought Uma Thurman was really good as Ariana Huffington as well.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I love the jab at Bill Maher in it too, and I love Bill Maher, but she's like, I've got to listen to all the bullshit that Bill Maher says. You know, just talking about being on bad dates with people. You know.
Yes. Did you get a chance to see any of these, Tooch? The Lakers one or the Uber one? Oh, you're muted.
Winning time with the Lakers, I'm caught up, but I haven't watched the Uber. Is the Uber's what, Showtime?
It's on
Yes, sir.
Showtime. Yeah.
Showtime, okay.
Yeah,
That's one I haven't caught up.
If you don't have Showtime, I can give you my login info when we get off air.
I have Showtime on Apple TV.
There you
Okay,
go.
well, there you go.
Yeah, it was like a package with Showtime, ESPN Plus, and Paramount Plus.
Mo Beerman says Aldo throwing dollar bills. Now, that was another thing I miss about my corporate job during that period that I was working is we did a lot of trips to Vegas, man. And I'll never forget the first year I worked for McDonald's corporate. We did a trip down to Vegas for the Consumer Electronics Show. So it was a convention, and my boss takes me to a strip club, and he kept sending strippers over. I mean, to give me lap dances. I was paying nothing, and I'm getting all these lap dances. And I was like, man, I really love this job. This is so good. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about that Lakers show, winning season of the Los Angeles Lakers Dynasty, I think it's a subtitle.
Winning time, the rise of the Lakers dynasty.
Thank you. So the episode this week is basically they're trying to find a head coach, and holy shit, their efforts to try to land Jerry Tarkanian, who was the head coach of the UNLV Running Rebels, was fucking fascinating. And I had no idea that this really happened. Tarkanian's basically right-hand man, advisor, and so forth. He was killed by the mob because Tarkanian was ready to go take this Lakers job. And Tarkanian, who probably was in business with the mob, and they didn't want him to leave because he would do what they were saying. They would make a lot of money off of him. Well, they knew that his financial advisor buddy guy was pushing him to make this move as the Lakers head coaching job. And for 2 or 3 days, they were calling him, couldn't find him, and they eventually found him in the trunk of a car.
It was his car.
It was his car.
Yeah.
Did you guys know this story at all?
I did not. No.
Oh my gosh. I did a little research on it, and most of it is exactly the way that it happened, except at the time, Jack Kent Cooke was still helping Jerry Buss. And so he was involved in some of these meetings down in Las Vegas and stuff. And, but yeah, for the most part, it's all true. I had no effing idea that happened. And what a scary thing that has to be. Yeah, I want to go get a new job, but Alfonso over there and Muggsy, they're not gonna let me leave this job. Wow. What'd you guys think of the episode?
It was good. I liked the show a lot. I'm surprised now. If you go back to the very beginning, the first episode, it seems like the very first scene was like Magic getting diagnosed with HIV.
Yes, correct.
We're not going to touch that at all. Like, we're already 30% into the season, and we don't even have a coach yet. So yeah. I thought maybe it was going to go through the entire, 5 championships. But I would say that the 10th episode's probably beating Philly when in Game 6 of 80 when Magic's a rookie playing center because Kareem's hurt.
That would be, I think, a great way to end it, and then renew the show for another season 2, 3, whatever it is. But they could, do a flash forward. They could, take you through that championship against the Sixers where Magic scores 42 points for the injured Kareem Abdul-Jabbar playing the center position, and then they could flash forward to the AIDS thing. So. But I'm falling in love with this show, and if you're a basketball fan, you should really check it out. I hope that there is a season 2, 3, 4 because there's a boatload of great material there.
I read that there was some talk that they could take. I guess Jeff's got another book about the Kobe Shaq days,
right?
Which I think we talked about with him when he had him on. Actually,
yes.
I think there's some talk of making that into a show as well. So, yeah, but I felt bad for Pat Riley, as we alluded to before. I never thought that he sounded feminine in any way. And the portrayal, like you said via text, like there's no way Pat could be happy with this episode.
No, I mean.
But maybe that's the way it really went down. Maybe he did tear down his garage out of frustration.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have got to see this. There's a scene in here where Riley is just frustrated with his post-playing career. And he's trying to land a job. He's just not getting any luck at all. He's disheveled. He's not doing well. And at one point, he goes to do some work in his garage, and just out of frustration, he tears the whole fucking thing down. And apparently he's got a sweetheart of a wife who's a psychiatrist, and she comes over and says, wow. So she sits next to him and says, oh, so this is what you've been doing all day, kind of thing. I'm not quoting exactly, but yeah, he can't be happy with that, and I hope that they do get to a point where we see him on the sidelines, because he didn't come in until the year following the Sixers championship, or was it 2 years later?
In '82 when they won it, he was the coach.
Okay.
But yeah, I think Westhead was fired during the '81 season.
Okay.
So I think he takes over then. It'll be interesting. Like, if you recall earlier in the episode when Pat was coming in, because early in the episode, they wouldn't even let him in the building. He's finally in the building. He runs into Jerry West, his former teammate, and he's like, yeah, you can help me put a word in for the job. And Jerry's like, what, for coach? And he says it with the tone like, you're not a coach. And think about it, Pat Riley's not a coach. He won 5 titles with the Lakers. He took the fucking Knicks to the finals. He won a championship with the Heat as a coach as well. So unless I'm miscounting, he's won 6 championships. Oh, 5, because the one the Lakers won was with Westhead. So he's won 5 championships. He lost to the Sixers. He lost to the Pistons. He lost to the Celtics once. And the Knicks lost to the Rockets. So, okay, so he's lost 4 and won 5. So the guy's Tom Brady.
Yeah.
When it comes with coaching, in the episode, Jerry West was like, "You're going to be a coach?" No. So I wonder if that really happened.
Yeah.
And they look at Pat Riley like, "There's no way you could coach."
Yeah, and people in the chat are saying, "Yeah, TV exaggerates stuff. This exaggeration." And sure, there is. In fact, they make they have a huge disclaimer saying, some of the characters are made up for to condense stuff, and some of the scenes are changed for dramatic purposes and so forth. So it's just trying to capture the spirit of the thing. And there's always been a long time debate among film critics and filmmakers whether when you're adapting something from a book, do you owe it to be faithful to the book? And filmmakers will usually come back and say it's impossible. It's 2 different mediums. And, if you were to basically take a book and almost word for word transcribe it and form into a screenplay, it would just be too boring and too long. So
Stanley Kubrick proved with The Shining that you can reimagine a book and make a great film.
That's right. And if somebody else wants to take that same book, purchase the rights, they can do their own interpretation of that book. And I totally agree with it. It's a different medium, and you got to do what's best for whatever medium. Now, these multi-part series like this one does give you the ability to be more faithful to the book, because you've got 10 hours now to tell the story in the book, but you still need to make some changes, because if you load it up with so many characters, you're just going to forget who the fuck is this guy again, and what's going on here, and this and that, so it's just different.
The one thing that I still question, and if we ever get Perlman on again, I would love to ask him. I still sort of take umbrage with the interpretation of Kareem, but maybe I'm misguided and I don't know. To me, everything I've ever read or heard about Kareem was that he, especially early on in Magic's tenure, is that he was withdrawn, he was quiet, he was respectful, and it was the smartest guy in the room, so he didn't want to high five and that kind of, he wasn't boisterous and gregarious. He was studious and he read books and he prayed, but he wasn't an asshole.
Right.
And in the series, they make him look like a fucking dick so far. And I just, maybe Kareem was, but that's not the Kareem that I always heard or read about.
Yeah, same here. In these early episodes, not a lot of screen time, but the few moments that he's had, he is just really a surly,
condescending
guy. And then there's a preview of next week's episode where he's telling Magic, to get him, water or something like that, talking down to Magic. And I think that might be all exaggerated just to play into that Kareem arc, because he goes from being very standoffish. And I had read this, that, he was not a real people type person, because he had lived a life where people were always gawking at him and trying to take advantage of him and using him and so forth. And so he was distant. But the one thing, the magic of Magic Johnson is that he really got Jabbar to appreciate giving a guy a hug and
high fives and winning and being happy.
Yeah. So I can see that being good, being somewhat real. What else have you guys seen that you like? Because I've got one thing that I want to talk about, but I forgot. I'm looking it up right now.
I saw. Do you know who Adrian Lyne is?
The director, yes.
Yeah, he did a Fatal Attraction.
Fatal Attraction. I think he did that Lolita movie that you like.
The remake was much better than the original.
Yeah, Adrian Lyne directed that one too, if I remember correctly.
He's got like another one right now on Hulu. That's made for Hulu. It's kind of like a updated version of Fatal Attraction, but it's a little spin on that kind of dangerous relationship or marriage or whatever. But it's Ben Affleck and Anna de Armas, a very beautiful Anna de Armas, and Ben Affleck plays a
You're
cop.
going to see the beautiful Ben Affleck.
That's what I thought.
I can if you'd like, Dan. Ben Affleck plays this cuck. He's like a super wealthy guy, invented some microchip or whatever. And he's married to this young nymphomaniac who sleeps with everybody. She has like a new boyfriend, and he's like, it's like burning him up, and he ends up like killing all these guys she brings around and like covering up the murders and stuff, and unraveling and stuff. It's really good. It has quite a good ending, the Adrian Lyne twist ending. But
I gotta
I
check
didn't
that
watch it. It was called Deeper Water. I
That's
think
on
it's called.
Hulu.
On Hulu, it's called Deeper Water.
I might check that out.
Yeah, that was good, man.
Staying in that same water theme, I've got one for you guys. It's on Netflix. It's called The Windfall, and it stars Jason Segel and Jesse Plemons, who was just an outstanding actor. And the woman in the movie.
You mean Jerry West?
No, not Jerry West.
Is that who plays Jerry West in The Winning Time?
Siegel's in the show, but I don't think we've seen him yet.
Yeah. No,
Jason Segel, is that the actor who plays Jerry West?
No, that's
no. He's in the show, but I don't think he plays Jerry. I don't think.
What's the coach's name?
Adrian Brody.
No, the one who's the coach that quit.
Adrian Brody.
That's Jerry West that quit, but
right.
Jason Segel's not Jerry West though.
Who's the actor that plays
Adrian Brody?
No, Adrian Brody plays Pat Riley.
Oh, you're right. The actor that plays I'm sorry.
It's Jason Segel, isn't it?
No. Segel's in it, but he's not playing. Let me look it up.
I'm looking it up. I'm sorry for yelling. In Winning Time, Jerry West. Who plays him? What the fuck is his name? He's been in a lot of shit. He was on a TV show that was filmed here in Chicago for a while. He played a cop. What the fuck's his name, man? Oh, Lord. Apparently no one in the chat room is going to help us out.
I'm looking. I got it right here. Hold on. I'm on. Okay. So Jerry West is played by Jason Clark.
That's him.
Jason Clark. Okay. Sorry.
My bad.
Yeah.
I apologize again for yelling.
Who does Segel play? I don't think we've seen him yet, but
I was close.
let's see.
All right, let me tell you about Windfall. Windfall is again with Jason Segel, who I think everybody remembers from Sarah Marshall film. He's been in a lot of funny films.
He was on that show. He plays Paul Westhead, by the way.
Oh, okay.
He was in How I Met Your Mother as well, that successful sitcom on CBS.
Okay, so looking forward to seeing him in that role. Well, he and Jesse Plemons and Lily Collins are the three leads in Windfall. And the premise is that the character Jason Segel plays is in this really fucking gorgeous mansion out in Southern California. He's there by himself. He's been living there for a while, it appears. And as the scene goes on, you start to get the feeling, well, I don't think he really lives here. And so as he's leaving, the real tenants, the real owners of this home, Lily Collins and Jesse Plemons, arrive and find them there. So Jason Segel immediately takes them hostage. And you can tell he's not a professional criminal by any means, and he's just trying to figure out how to get out of there and without being arrested or anything like that. The complication happens is that Jesse Plemons is a very rich asshole type, and Jesse immediately thinks that he is a former employee who was let go on the recent cutbacks and so forth, and they start kind of negotiating. Plemons is not happy to go along as a hostage, and it becomes a very tense situation inside this home. It's almost, it feels claustrophobic because most of the scenes are inside the house, and there's a lot of tension going on between all three characters, and we start to learn certain things. I won't give it away, but if you've got a couple of hours free, it's actually, you need a couple hours. It's an hour and a half.
Now, what is it on?
That's on Netflix.
Oh, okay.
Do you have Netflix, Dan?
We do it. We do at work. We've got Hulu and Netflix and all that shit at work. At home, I just have regular TV, and my mass collection, but of DVDs and sports and such. But yeah, I can watch that at work.
Cool. And do you know who Jesse Plemons is?
I do not, but I do know Jason Segel.
Yeah, Jesse Plemons
This
is
is Breaking Bad, right?
no, he wasn't in Breaking Bad. He was in Friday Night Lights, the TV show. He was in The Power of the Dog, a movie Tucci.
Right. Yeah, it was great.
He was the
He was the brother of Benedict Cumberbatch.
Exactly. He was in The Irishman, the Scorsese movie. Martin Scorsese.
I like The Irishman a lot.
Yeah, Martin Scorsese loves Jesse Plemons. He was also in
Black Mass. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like Black Mass too with Johnny Depp.
Yep. So this Jesse Plemons guy, he's, it doesn't seem like he would be much of an actor, but the guy always delivers. Big time actor, and just looks like an everyman guy. He was also in season 2, I want to say, of Fargo, the TV show, a TV show that I highly recommend on FX. I think
I watched season 1, and Billy Bob was so over the top I couldn't watch another one.
Give the other seasons a shot, Dan, because I think you'll like them, especially the last season with Chris Rock. He plays a badass. But some really good stuff there. I hope that you guys get a chance to watch some of these things. He was in Breaking Bad, Jesse Plemons. Oh, yes, he was. Yes, he was.
To bring this full circle, as I have to leave.
Okay.
The first thing we talked about was Manson. Mm-hmm. It's ironic because Manson's best friend's Johnny Depp.
I know.
And Johnny Depp alleging that Amber Heard is a big fucking liar and is constantly suing her.
Mm-hmm.
So they're both going through similar situations.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that either is innocent or guilty or what have you, but Manson, like I told you before, the lady that booked his flights and cooked his meals from like 03 to 17 until she finally was like, look, I want to have a family of my own before it's too late. Because she was in her mid to late 30s when she quit just to have a normal existence. She claimed that, and she's like, oh God, Amber Heard was so terrible. And she claimed that they were at a party and Johnny brought them over to Manson's house, and that Amber Heard's father and mother tried to have a threesome with her.
Ooh.
With his publicist. And she was so, she was like, Johnny's such a great guy. And like, she's just so terrible. And, just drama 24/7 and just incessant lies. So, but she defends Manson too. So I don't know what it means, but there you go. It's a full circle from the beginning to the end that they are good friends and they're both in similar spots.
All right. So let me ask you a question. When you get to work now, you're going to your 911 job. What's the first
until 4 p.m.
Until 4 p.m. Unbelievable. And that's Eastern time.
Midnight to 4.
Wow. What do you do when you first get there? Do you drink coffee? I
don't like coffee. I have to assess what's going on because I'm the supervisor too with the other shift. And you kind of just have that shift change and you all just sort of talk about, oh, what have you done the last few days? Because this will be my first day back and they'll tell me about some shit that I missed while I was gone. Like, oh, you won't believe how fucking awful this call was, that kind of thing. And
shit.
Usually it's about an hour of talking. And then, unless the job is already bumping and you're busy, and then that's when things will slow down and maybe you can watch TV or read or whatever. Of course, you have to stop whenever the calls are coming.
Yeah. Can you hold, please? I'm in the middle of the conclusion of this.
I'm in the middle of a good book. I mean.
By the way, did you see that Jake Gyllenhaal movie where he plays a 911 operator? Yeah, what'd you think?
It was much better than the Halle Berry one, which was laughable. But the Gyllenhaal one, he couldn't use that language and shit toward the callers.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff that was unbelievable, implausible. But I thought it was from a suspense standpoint, it was pretty good.
The one thing I will say, and he is playing a policeman, and I'm not anti-police. So I don't want this construed. One of my best friends is the police officer. But they are allowed to say and talk to anybody the way they want to. And there's always a few people, because again, I worked at a PD for 3 years and I deal with them now at 911. There's always a few officers that it doesn't matter if it's your grandmother, if it's your 14-year-old niece, or if it's a heroin addict who's been arrested 35 times. They talk shit to everybody and will call, like I said, grandmothers whores, and that they are allowed to talk the way they want to talk without any retribution whatsoever.
Wow.
So the fact that Gyllenhaal was a policeman on there, maybe that's the way they talk to people is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They are allowed to say whatever they want.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. PJ wants to know how many calls for service do you guys get on a typical shift?
Well, again, there's two different things there. Like, does the call require you to make a record of it? That's what we would call an incident, or maybe you'd call it a report or a documentation of the call. Or it could just be a grudge call. You know, someone gets passed on the interstate. My dick's small, so that ain't happening to me. I'll call in and say that this person's driving 150 and they're erratic and they're drunk. That shit happens constantly. Just the grudge call. So it's your job to filter through that shit. So how many calls you take versus how many documented like incidents, that number ratio, I don't know. But on a midnight, we can range from as low as like 10 to as many as 40 or 50. It just depends on the night. Like evening shift, you can have well over 100. Morning shift are about the same, because especially there's so many EMS calls during the morning, which I think that's what I'm dispatching on this overtime shift. It's dreadful. Just the EMS calls, just over and over and over.
What do you say when you answer the phone?
If you're calling 911,
what's your emergency?
I see a lot of people will say like 911, where's your emergency? I don't want to give you an opportunity to be frustrated with me. I feel like I say 911 and I let you talk.
Oh, okay.
So you can spit out, because you're always going to tell me shit that I don't need at first.
All right.
You know, like, because you're upset. Like this guy, you know, my job then is to kind of interrupt and put you on course to like, let me get the info I need. But I want you to think I'm letting you vent. So I just say 911 and let you roll this way. And if you call the non-emergency line, I'll say just, you know, Mercer Control, because they call us control on the radio instead of dispatch. So I'll just say Mercer Control. But usually at the non-emergency line, that might be a policeman calling or somebody that you work with or whatever. It's not necessarily a lot of alarm calls. Oh my God. And if you have an alarm company, whether it be ADT or whatever, make sure they have your info, because this is so fucking true. And I got to go, but they'll call in and be like, yeah, we're getting a medical alarm at this address. I'll be like, oh, okay. Well, how old's the patient? I don't know. What's the patient's gender? I don't know. Do you have the patient's name? No. Like, what are you taking their fucking money? You have nothing but their address?
Unbelievable.
And that is not an aberration.
Oh,
Like I said, I have been there since 2009. These alarm companies don't care. They just cash your check. And that's the thing too. They call us before they call to check on you. So if your alarm's going off and it's like a panic alarm and there's real shit going down at your house, they don't call to, even if it's a false alarm, it would make sense to, Mr. Gandhi, are you okay? Do you need the police?
right.
They call us first.
Hey, real
So-
quick before you go,
Yeah.
and because I know you could talk for another 30 minutes on this, but I sent you a video today about a fan at a basketball game doing
Oh,
something.
the dick thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got to ask you, would you do this if they said, "Hey, we're going to fly you to Chicago for every game, but during the game, you have got to make this motion where you're taking some fictitious dick and pretending you're sucking it, and we're going to put you on TV in exchange. The Bears go to the Super Bowl. What would you do it?
Oh, for the Super Bowl?
Yeah,
Yes. If it meant we were going to win.
you're a true Bears.
If we're going back to Miami to lose again, then no.
You're a true Bears fan. I love you. Go save some lives, and we'll talk to you, man.
All right, you all be well now. Thank you.
Good night, Danny.
He
night, sir.
is Danny Aguirre, the one and only. Jeez. I wouldn't do that. I don't give a fuck. It's Super Bowl. If they said, "Hey, a dynasty, we'll give you 5
What
straight."
the heck? What is that? It looks like a Golden State Warriors. No?
And apparently, it's a growing trend. I don't get that at all, man. I'm not a homophobe by any means, but I don't want to be doing that. No way. There's another way for us to win. It's by going, yay!
I'm sure my company would fire me if they came to light. Company that I work for would fire me.
Oh man! All right, Mr. Johnny Santu.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything else on the tube that you'd like to share with people, whether it's a movie or a
Well, I
TV?
finished Euphoria season 2, and I really enjoyed it, man. I was like, it's got a style that's kind of like semi-retro, as far as like the gritty camera and stuff, and the graphics and transitions and credits and stuff, where it kind of reminds me of like maybe like Tarantino's type of style, But Euphoria season 2 was really great, man. It was excellent.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do a binge on that. The problem is my wife doesn't want to see it, so I have to find some time when I'm alone to do a binge.
It was good.
We watched that morning show together, and we were really blown away. And by the end of it, I was in tears, man. It was a very emotional ending. It's very, very powerful. The one thing about that free trial, it didn't allow us to access anything that's in season 2. So I did the binge on the morning show for season 1. I also did a binge on Ted Lasso, which I had not seen before.
That was awesome. Yeah, great show.
I got to tell you.
Could you just do season 1 or?
I did season 1, right? Because
season 2 was even better.
Okay, that's what I'm hoping for, because I got to tell you, season 1 was okay. It wasn't as great. I kept reading all these social media comments. It got better, particularly the last 5 episodes. The first 5, I was kind of struggling with it. Man, should I continue to watch this? And I said, well, let me continue. And by those last few episodes, I was in. And so I'm really looking forward to watching season 2.
Yeah, I mean, Apple TV is totally worth it. They have some great shows. Yeah, Ted Lasso is probably one of their best shows. I love Jason Sudeikis' performance and like all these like Dust Bowl folk wisdom that he comes up with, during the show. And then he like mixes in some pop culture references and stuff. And like, I remember I tweeted something out about how there was one episode. I was like, coach, his assistant coach, I forget the guy's name, but he's
a very deadpan delivery.
Yeah, very deadpan.
Yeah.
And the episode was like an episode that was centered on his character, the assistant coach.
Oh, cool.
And he has this he's got like he's in sort of like an abusive relationship in season 2. Not really abusive, but just a troublesome relationship of with his girlfriend. They have a volatile relationship, and on the night when
Coach Beard is his character.
Coach Beard, yeah, Coach Beard. Coach Beard is hilarious too. And he goes out on this night out. He's trying to like maybe break up with her finally, and he gets in all sorts of trouble. It's kind of like that After Hours movie by Martin Scorsese with Griffin Dunn, where he has this like night out on the town and all these like calamitous events happen. That's it was like a takeoff on that, where all these bad things happen to Coach Beard. And the night he wants to tell his girlfriend he loves her, and he wants to break up. He doesn't know, but he ends up like wearing this like disco pants outfit by accident, because his other clothes they have to like dress up to get into they like sneak into this gentleman's club in England, with like howdy toddy. They're wearing these hilarious like costumes from the bar that they hang out with. Him and those 3 fans that are always at the bar. Fans of Richmond Football Club and stuff. And I tweeted out something about how brilliant I thought the show was, and Jason Sudeikis retweeted me. It was awesome.
Oh, cool.
That was like 100,000 views of my tweet. So, but that was one in season 2. You get to see it's a brilliant episode, man. It's so funny.
Yeah. And I gotta tell you, the entire cast is really, really fucking good in Ted Lasso. The woman who plays the
Juno
owner,
Temple.
Rebecca. She plays the owner of the team, right. Hannah Waddingham.
Yeah,
I find her gorgeous. Probably a woman in her late 40s, maybe early 50s. She actually was
very tall.
Yeah, very tall, very muscular, very, very shaped. Her arms, man, she's got beautifully sculptured arms. And she was in Game of Thrones. She was the woman who would lead the Shane. Yes, that was her. I was like, holy shit, she looks gorgeous in that show. And then Juno Temple, who has an excellent role in it, a very kind of smart woman who sort of is a groupie. I'm sorry,
Keeley.
Keeley.
The character's name is Keeley.
Oh, okay,
Keeley
yeah.
Jones. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And so she just gives out such great advice. She's just a great character on that show.
She's the sex pot.
Yeah, sex pot, man, and she's hot too. And then the older
Player.
player,
Roy Kent. He's my
Roy-
spirit animal.
yeah, he's great.
He's always angry. He's like, "Urgh."
Yeah, he's one of the co-founders, co-creators of the show. Brett Goldstein. He's excellent in it, and
Yeah,
it's
great.
just there's some nice depth to it. And I agree with Michael Diaz. He says it's kind of an '80s rom-comish feel to it.
The
But
towel boy who became the assistant coach too, Nate, the little Indian guy.
Yeah.
He's great too.
He is great, man.
Yeah.
That one scene where he gets his promotion is fantastic, man.
And then the player personnel guy who's more like just the nerdy accountant. He's funny as hell too, man.
Yeah, what's his name in the show?
I can't remember. It's like
Higgins.
Higgins.
And then Cristo Fernandez plays Danny Rojas. He comes in and he just gives the show some energy. But you're right about Jason Sudeikis. Here's a guy who, I always thought I would put him in my top 10 of all time Saturday Night Live performers. The guy always delivered funny.
Yep.
He's an excellent physical comedian too, the way he dances and stuff.
Yeah.
He's really good. I've seen some of his movies. He did a movie with Jennifer Aniston, where Jennifer Aniston played a real bitch, and I'm forgetting the title.
Here come the Millers, or Meet the Millers. The Millers.
The Millers. See, that was a different one. The one that I'm thinking about, but that was
wasn't that him with Jennifer Aniston. They were pot dealers or something.
Exactly.
Right.
They are in the life of crime, and they're playing a family together, and they go to collect some marijuana. They're forced to, not by their free will. It's a very dangerous affair, but that's a good one. But there was another one that he played with Justin Bateman and Jennifer Aniston. She didn't play a bitch. She played a very sexually aggressive woman who just, will tell you, "I'm going to fuck you," and she always got her way. I forgot the title.
Beautiful, man. She's like my age.
Yeah, she's a phenomenal actor.
She's like a few months younger than me or something. That's 53 years old, 52 years old, man. She's fucking hot.
Yeah. And when you see her in the morning show, you're going to say, wow, this is a great performance by her, because you're just so familiar with her romantic comedy stuff and her TV sitcom work. She's done some dramatic roles too, but in the morning show, she plays a very, very complex character who sometimes shows great emotion, great empathy, and then sometimes it's just a fucking bitch. Horrible Bosses. Thank you, Joe. That is the movie. That is indeed the movie. Horrible Bosses. And Retro got that right. Hey, I had a meeting with Retro today. What a great guy you are, Retro. Got some great ideas on some stuff that we're looking forward to.
Didn't she do a movie where there was like the Christmas party or something like that with PJ Miller?
Yes.
She's like his brother. He's always fucking up.
Yeah. I did not see that, but I'm aware of that. And my wife was telling me,
funny.
Well, my wife was telling me about one of her favorite movies of Jennifer Aniston, where she's in love with Vince Vaughn, and they go through a breakup because he's kind of immature and so forth. And I've never seen it, but I saw a few scenes, and she appeared to be really, really good in that movie too. So yeah, she's fantastic. Switch, is that the movie you're referring to?
Mine. I thought it was called The Christmas Party. The office party, or the Christmas party.
Yeah, right. I think it was The Christmas Party. I think it was
something like that. The office party or the Christmas party with like Jennifer Aniston. PJ Miller was like her no good brother, or never do well brother. And she's hotter that she's older now.
Yeah, and my wife asked me, "Do you think that she's hot?" And I said, I've never put her up in that top tier of hotness, but there were a couple of times where she was in that top tier. I'll give you an example. The movie she did with what's the guy's name? He plays the guitar. He's been in a lot of romantic comedy movies. Was on Saturday Night Live.
Adam Sandler.
Yes, Adam Sandler. Where Adam Sandler plays a successful dentist, and Jennifer Aniston plays his assistant, and he needs Jennifer Aniston to play his ex-wife and the mother of his children, which he has neither of. He doesn't have children, and he doesn't have an ex-wife, but he's trying to woo over gosh, I wish I could remember these characters and actors' name. A gorgeous blonde. He's trying to woo her over, and so they're down in vacationing in Mexico, so forth. And so Jennifer Aniston is running around in a bikini, and oh my God, her body is just like you said earlier. For a woman her age, really any age, she's got a phenomenal body, and just is so sexy. Yeah, the
thing about Jennifer Aniston is that not only she's beautiful, but she's cute.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you call her cute because she does have that kind of cute, perky. You know, she's funny.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and she's beautiful. You know, she's like, she could be all of those things, you know, which makes her very appealing.
Michael Diaz says the one that with Vince Vaughn is
the breakup.
Is the breakup filmed in Chicago.
Yep.
And there was some scenes shot at the United Center, I think at a hockey game. Vince Vaughn is a big hockey fan. Just Go With It, PJ says, is the title of the movie that I was thinking with Sandler and Jennifer Aniston. Yes, that is indeed it, and I highly recommend it.
I haven't seen that.
It's very, very good. It's a great watch, great scenes. Mike Patrick, is it Mike? Or Dan Patrick. Dan Patrick is in it. Dan and the Danettes are in it. And, Dan Patrick has been in a few Adam Sandler movies. I guess they're good friends, and Sandler always finds a role for him.
They did one recently on Netflix where there was like an Italian murder mystery where they were on a cruise ship, or not a cruise ship, a yacht. I forget the name of that one.
Did you see it? Was it good?
Yeah, it was really funny.
Yeah, I got to check that out.
Yeah.
Let's see. Cliff is asking, how did this go from Bears to TV?
It always goes from Bears to TV, though.
Typically, the way we do the show, Cliff, is we usually end up with talking TV and movies for the last 30 minutes, and then we also get some betting advice from Johnny's on Dude.
Oh, yeah.
So how has the betting going? You been winning any money?
Well, I had a huge Sunday. Just betting Houston first half and Houston full game, which I think I sent those to you too. I sent you my card that day. Over the weekend I was 15, 8, and 2, so up 7 units. So that's for as hard as the NCAA tournament has been this year. That's pretty damn good.
Fucking A.
And then tonight, man, I had a decent night tonight with Middle Tennessee State, and then Vanderbilt first half and Vanderbilt plus the points full game. So it was like, Scottie Pippen at that. I was like, I'm going to lose the first half. And Scottie Pippen's kid hits a 3-pointer right with like 1 second left.
Amazing.
To cover that spread in the, in the beginning. I played money line first half too, because Xavier was 1-12 their last 13 first halves against the spread. I'm like, all right, they start slow. I'll put money on Vanderbilt.
Mm-hmm.
And they got the best player on the floor and Scotty's kid. So I got a pretty good chance of winning that bet. That one came through. But I like Miami. Sunday also had the Houston versus Illinois first half full game. And then Iowa State versus Wisconsin Badgers. That was the under first half and the under full game. There's only 103 points scored in the whole game. It was all defense.
Wow.
That was big too. And then I played Purdue -3 versus Texas. So my top 5 bets all hit on Sunday. So it was a good Sunday. Now there's nothing going on. We got the Sweet 16 starts Thursday. Some great matchups. And before I was like, oh, Kentucky's going to kill St. Peter's. And St. Peter's has won 2 games. They're in the Sweet 16. A tiny little school of 3,800 students, that's like in Jersey City, with a great coach. Who'll probably be the head coach at Seton Hall next year. Just great. They took down Kentucky. I don't know if Aaron Current's still in the chat room, but it's probably too soon for him.
Yeah, he's in bed now.
He's in bed now. It's like he'd be pissed if I brought it up.
Oh yeah.
And then they beat Murray State, a team that was 31-2 this season.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. it's a good story. That's the Cinderella for this tournament. St. Peter's Peacocks, and then you've got Gonzaga, Duke, Kansas, North Carolina, Arkansas, UCLA. All the big schools are still Texas Tech. Those are still good. And then you got smaller schools like Iowa State had an upset last week. They made it to Sweet 16, and Miami Hurricanes. Well, I like the Hurricanes in this one. I mean, Iowa State has had a pretty good run. They can't score. Miami has got these really dynamic little guards that are super fast. I think Miami will be able to, outscore Iowa State. I don't know. I don't think it's just not the right style for Iowa State to play the defense like they did in that last game. But
right, that's the late game on Friday.
Yep. So I had to put my bet in on Miami because the line just moved so much. Iowa State was the favorite, and then it moved to Miami being the favorite. But I was able to get my bet in earlier. Someone asked me for CBI picks, so that would be what tomorrow basketball classic. I'd have to look at the schedule, but
you look at the schedule. And meanwhile, just I'm not a professional gambler, so please do not take my advice here. But just for kicks, I want to give you my picks for the 4 Thursday night games. Gonzaga, number 1 Gonzaga at number 4 Arkansas. Definitely Gonzaga is going to win that game.
I think so.
Number 2 Villanova versus number 11 Michigan. I'm picking the upset here. Michigan is going to win that game. You know why? Just because I'm tired. I'm tired of the I am down with criticizing Big Ten football because they never do good in bowl games. But in the tournament, the Big Ten usually holds its own against the big conferences. Now, Villanova has had an outstanding season this year, but I think Michigan is just gonna upset people. I was listening to this guy, what's his name, Daniel Perriman. He used to be on the Dan Patrick Show, and now he's got a show on CBS. The Maggie and Perloff Show, it's called. And he was downgrading Michigan and all the other Big Ten schools, saying Duke and North Carolina are so much more famous than them. Michigan shouldn't be considered. And she was disagreeing, saying Michigan has had a huge impact on culture in the United States. They should be regarded like Duke and North Carolina. And agree. If you agree with her or not, but I just didn't like the way Perloff was. He's got this East Coast mentality about stuff. And when I used to listen to him on the Dan Patrick Show, he was the same way. And then the third game, number 2 Duke versus number 3 Texas Tech. This is, of course, in my opinion, is the game of this Thursday, Friday's matchups. I'm going to pick Texas Tech to end Coach K's career. And then the last one, Arizona at Houston. I've got Arizona beating Houston. So take that for what it's worth, and it's not worth much, people.
Well, I mean, Arizona is, they're huge. They have a ton of size. They have great athletes. Houston has a fucking amazing coach, Kelvin Sampson, who I believe played in the NBA. Dan Aguirre could tell you as well. But Houston is probably one of Houston and Texas Tech, probably the 2 top defenses in college basketball. Houston will beat you up too. They crash the boards. They're not as big as Arizona. They're smaller guys, but man, they have some star shooters like Jamal Shed. And Arizona's point guard, Chris Creasy, he's got an ankle injury. Don't know whether he'll play. Gonzo. The check's in the mail, Gonzo.
Gonzo Tuch's a hand. Oh, and I agree with Gonzo. He certainly is. Look at that close up. This is Robert De Niro.
I'm ready for my close up, Sarah.
So I'm sorry to interrupt.
So there's kind of we don't know whether Creasy's going to play for Arizona, and Arizona has kind of like first half of games they've kind of started slow, and then they've had to come. They almost lost to TCU. They got lucky, and TCU ended up losing that game at the end of the game. Michigan is a team that has a ton of talent. They are underperformed the first part of the season. Now they woke up. For this part, they woke up for the NCAA tournament, showing about how people thought they would play, before the season started. So that will be a really good game as well. Kansas and Providence. Providence just has this luck, the horseshoe up their ass. They're just, keeping games close and then stealing them at the very end. They're also very well coached.
Amazing.
North Carolina just had a big upset win. They beat last year's champion, Baylor. Took an early exit, didn't make it to the Sweet 16. North Carolina doesn't play a lot of defense. They could score. They're long and fast. And Texas Tech, Gonzaga to me is kind of soft. They're efficient defensively, but man, like guys like Holmgren and Timmy, they're not the best post defenders. And Texas Tech will beat you up, and they have some size too. They don't have a great offense like Gonzaga does either. So that'll be a really good game. For me, it's like sad. I'm not really good at other sports. College basketball, I've seen to be the best at handicapping and figuring out who's going to win or what the best bet is. Maybe not who's going to win or whatever, but what the best angle for the bet. And then NFL, but I don't recommend gambling on the NBA. It's just, I'm not sure it isn't fixed, but you never know who's going to be playing. And like the other night, I think it was the Nuggets. The Nuggets played, the first half. Then the second half, they started their bench. So the bench played the second half of the game. There's no way you can handicap that, or how are you supposed to?
Crazy. That's crazy. Yeah. And you know what? If the NBA is going to be pursuing sponsors for betting sponsors, they got to stop this shit. They got to figure out a way to stop this shit. And I think that the NBA season is become a little bit, the 82 game season with the long playoffs, I think it's become a little too stressful on some of these players. Now people will say, yeah, but it used to be worse, with the traveling and stuff. There's so many great accommodations for these players, but I can't. I just think that if you're going to play 82 games, you need to spread out. You can't have these back-to-back games, people getting on a plane and playing the next night and so forth. It's just bad for the quality of play. It's bad for the players' health, and it's bad for gamblers. We need to see who is going to be playing before we lay down a bet. And we should have it should be like the NFL. The NFL, for all of its faults, is probably – outside of college basketball, probably the most friendly towards bettors by letting throughout the week who is on the injured list. So that frustrates me that the NBA has become a league that placing a bet is like doing it blindfolded. It's not good, man.
Yeah, I'm sad when college basketball is over because that's where I make most of my money. The season next year, I'll tell you, I'm going to make a lot of money on Creighton next year because they are super talented. They lost their two best players. They almost beat Kansas the other day without their two best players, their center and their point guard. Still, a lot of talent. I think they'll be a pretty good bet next year. And then UCLA looks pretty good this year. I wouldn't sleep on them, man. They're starting to put it all together. They've been injured, with Jaquez and Juzang. Johnny Juzang, good shooter. Probably one of the best shot creators in the NCAA. And then, of course, Arkansas, you mentioned before, J.D. Note is another guy that's probably going to be in the NBA. Very good at getting to the hoop. That's the thing. And they don't shoot. I mean, Arkansas gets to the line a lot. That'll be the thing, that might be the difference between them and Gonzaga. Gonzaga has got a ton of talent. Like Drew Timme is, great scorer, down in the post, right hand, left hand in the post. He's really good. And then Purdue has taken on St. Peter's. So I don't trust Purdue. Their defense sucks. They have that half Chinese kid that's, like 7'4", just like Yao Ming, Zach Edey. Yeah. And then they have Jamal Williams as a big power forward. And Jaden Ivey. They got 3 stars. How much do I spend on gambling a week? I don't know. I gamble on college basketball every day, probably 10 games, 5 to 10 games, and then $5 to $10
a game, you would say?
No, I probably my bankroll is big now that's toward the end of the season, so I probably bet 25 to 100 a game now. Cool. On college basketball. But beginning of the season, I start out $5 or $10 a game. So.
By the way, we need to address this. Cliff, where is it, Cliff? I should have put a little star behind it. Cliff is having dinner tomorrow night with his wife and a friend. And I'm assuming that this friend is a woman. And he wants some advice. And so I'm assuming that that's what he's trying to get to. Now, Cliff, by his own admission, has had some fun times in his past that he is rated R-rated, which is good. But we want to get to that X-rated stuff, Cliff. Well, here's my advice. First of all, I need to find out, would your wife be down for a threesome? Because then that's half the battle right there, right? If your wife is like, he's like, didn't mean to make the podcast. Sorry, but you did. I know you got a family, so I won't refer to you by your name anymore, Cliff. Oh, excuse me, Bill. So here's the thing: if your spouse, I'll say this to anyone out there listening, if your spouse is down to, have a little bit of fun with somebody else, and what you now need to do is try to convince the other person, right? So you do mirroring, so. During dinner, you watch the hand movements of the person you're trying to seduce and enter into this threesome. And so you start to mirror those movements. What that does is starts to create some type of connection. When you sit down, when you see her cross her legs, you also cross your legs. And when you see that person using hand movements, you start to mirror those same hand movements when you talk. And then the killer is that at a certain point, once you start getting the vibe that, man, she's really looking at me and paying attention to everything that I'm saying and really sucking it all in, so to speak, then you uncross your legs and you sit wide open in that V position and you let them, that's the opening, that's the invitation. And if you get back a signal that, a little smile, a little, look of the eye and so forth, that's when you get up and you sit a little closer, and the rest is history, brother. I just made all that up, by the way. PJ, I think it understood that. I was making that up. Cliff is saying that I could take a pill. Don't do a Bill Cosby, whatever you do. Anyway, my wife is definitely not going to play along with that. And so I might edit that out of the show. No, I'm not kidding. I'm kidding. She doesn't listen to the show anymore. She used to at first, just to kind of police what I was saying. And then she found it all too boring and said, okay, you could say whatever you want. Just don't talk about me. Cliff says, although I have been there and done that, but thanks for the advice. Right. We're going to have Cliff on the show.
Cliff, yeah.
Protect his identity. Will like.
Are those the two ladies he's having dinner with?
I don't know.
Is there room for a tooch in there?
There you go. All right, let's go. Let's pull the plug on this one, too.
All right.
Let people know
I got one last question for you before I was like, Bears have 2 second-round picks.
That's right.
Would you be against like drafting a safety?
No, absolutely not.
Neither would I. There's some good ones, man, in this draft.
Yes, indeed. On last Thursday's Draft on Tap show, there was a 20-minute debate between Danny Shinman and Neil Stopchinski over the value of a safety. Yeah. I'm a little bit more on Neil's point of view here, that safeties are more and more necessary than ever before, because you need them to be so versatile, play in the box, play the
cover the slot.
Exactly. You need them to do so much, and so many times the Bears have overlooked safeties and the importance of safeties. Overall, defensive backs, the value of defensive backs have increased dramatically. But that safety role, if you can find a good safety who has that versatility, Absolutely. Grab him in that second round. And like you said, there are some really good ones in this.
We're not in range for Kyle Hamilton, but man,
yeah, he would be nice.
He's like a unicorn, 6'4", 220. It's just like, man, him in the back, roaming the defensive backfield of the Bears. Oh man.
Yeah. Man, it would be nice if they could find a taker for Eddie Jackson and at least maybe get a 4th round pick for him. 5th round, I'd take, and then you'd have to now draft 2 safeties, but maybe the draft capital gets you there. And there are still, usually NFL free agency, the last position that has a lot of good available players is the safety position. And for some reason, again, NFL teams don't sign safeties at early on. They wait for that 2nd and 3rd wave. Honey Badger is available, like Gonzo's saying, Cliff is saying, a lot of people have been saying throughout this show.
He's a playmaker, man. I know some people are like, oh, he ain't that good. He makes plays.
He does, man.
He makes plays.
Yeah, he makes plays, and he's got his head screwed on right. When he came out of college, I was a little worried. This guy a little too reckless with his behavior and stuff. I don't know for sure if he was back then, but I know for sure now. This guy, what he wants most of all is to be a winner, and he would be a good fit, Cliff, when you say that. So I'm for it. Any other questions that you had, or is that it?
Me? Questions?
Yes, sir.
No, I think we're good. Aldo, pull the plug.
I got a question for you. Are you going to watch the premiere episode of South Burbs Hitman Monday night at 8 p.m. Central? It is all about the White Sox with Joe Mandel, Chris Gonzalez, Vinny Parisi, and Ryan Zimmerman. Outstanding show. They always have great guests. I don't think they're going to have a guest on this first show.
I was like, is his name Ryan or Steven?
Did I say Steven?
Ryan. Steven, isn't it?
Yeah, it is Steven. I thought it was Steven. No.
I was like, I thought his name was Ryan too for a second there.
Not the first time I've said Ryan Zimmerman. I don't know why.
I will drop in. I usually drop in there and make fun of those guys. And
you should. You should.
Yeah. The return of Joe Mandel to the airwaves. This is exciting, man. I'll probably pour a drink too for that.
Yeah, and everybody should know this, that Joe is a dad now.
Yeah.
Let me go full screen here.
All right. Yeah.
Got a beautiful baby girl.
Yeah, look at that.
Beautiful wife.
What a beautiful couple and beautiful family.
Just can't get any better than that.
Yeah, and, cute.
Yeah, you've got 3 of those.
Yep. 3 kids, two girls and a boy.
There you go. And your son now is what, 19 or 20?
He's 23 now. Yep.
23, man, how the years go by. Woo-hoo.
Yeah.
And your girls what age?
They'll be 4 and 6 this year, this summer.
4 and 6. Great age.
Yeah. We're leaving for a Harry Potter world a week from tomorrow.
Oh, baby.
Yeah, we'll be in Florida. And right after that, Siesta Key for 6 days on the beach.
Nice.
Sarasota, Florida. Yep.
Have you ever seen that show, Siesta Key? It's on MTV or something like that. My daughter.
No, it's beautiful there, though.
Yeah, my stepdaughter and wife watch that religiously. All those rich people down there are worried about boyfriends breaking up and girlfriends. It's great stuff. Foster's asking me, what is the meaning of life? It's very, very simple.
Yeah.
It's surviving.
Yeah, basically.
Really? I mean, everybody says love and this and no. It's staying healthy and trying to live as long as you can. That's the meaning of life.
Yeah, I was thinking that very same thing today. It's just surviving.
Yeah, really. I mean, I think, and I'm sure people will have better answers than me on that. By the way, look, Cliff lives in Sarasota.
I'm going to drop in and see old Cliff.
There you go.
Want to go to the beach with my toddlers, Cliff?
They're great kids.
We're going to hunt for some seashells. Yeah, Sarasota is pretty, man. I've never been to that side of Florida. We usually go to the Atlantic side just because March, usually the Atlantic's a little bit warmer than the Gulf.
That's right.
But April, you could get probably, evens out a little bit there. But the beaches are supposed to be nicer on that on that side, the Siesta Key, Lido Key, all those beaches, Clearwater Beach.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't been down there yet. But
have a great time. Send us a lot of pictures, and I want to remind people to follow the Tooch on the Twitter machine. It is at John Santucci VIP.
Yep.
I get all these great text messages.
My card for the day for my clients. Aldo gets my card. Usually I just send it to him if I think it's a good card. Sunday's card. I hope you played Sunday's card, man. It was like
I didn't get a chance to, man.
I think it was 8-2 that day. I was like, wow, something like that. 8-4.
Yeah, but I will be this weekend if you send it to me again.
Yeah, it's harder now. It's
harder to pick.
Harder, but to my free plays, I'm on a streak winning my free plays now too.
Nice.
Yeah, I gotta ask Cliff. Someone gave me a recommendation of a restaurant that sounds right up my alley. Aldo, I love tapas and I love seafood.
Yeah,
and there's a place that's been there since 1907 called the Columbia Restaurant, which the wife and I are going to go to. I think it's in Sarasota. Wonder if, Siesta Key, man.
And Cliff says, get to Siesta Key.
Got to get there early. Yeah,
find a parking spot early. It's always tough to do that when you got kids to be early anywhere. All right, everybody. It is time to pull the plug for John Santucci, for Dan Aguirre, for myself, Aldo Gandhi, and for everybody. Thank you a lot for being here live with us and interacting. It's so much fun to interact with you guys and get to know you guys better. And those of you listening on demand, try to join us here on a Tuesday night. And
is Gonzo in San Diego now?
Who?
Gonzo moved out. He moved out to San Diego, huh?
He's now in border security. He's down working at the border, beating people up.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
Nice.
And
love the Mexican food in San Diego, man.
Don't forget that next week it is South Burbs Hitmen, Monday at 8 p.m. Tomorrow, I don't think we have anything on the schedule tomorrow other than that 2:00 p.m. Central. It is Bar Down Hockey. Going to talk about all the trades that were made over the last few days. And then Crosstown Crosstalk is taking a week off on Thursday. And so we will have Draft on Tap on Thursday. So we got some programming coming up, and Greg Gabriel and I will be together on Friday. Greg wants to do a show about everything leading up to the draft process. What teams are doing now in terms of building their boards, about talking to agents and so forth. It's going to be a master class on what front offices are doing throughout the NFL. So that should be fun. It'll be
I've always wanted to know about that part of the process, that side.
Yeah, me too.
So I'd definitely be tuning into that. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, tune in. Hopefully you can tune in live, fire away your questions. And Greg,
is that tomorrow or next week? Or?
That's this upcoming Friday, which is
okay.
The 25th. Man, the month is going by. So that is it for tonight. Thank you again for being on the show, everybody, and we'll talk to you all very soon.
Thank you for listening to Dan and Aldo Bare Their Souls. Make sure you subscribe to the Barroom Network and you give us a rating on iTunes. Until next week, my name is Nomse. Bear down.